It's the year 2010. Apple just announced the iPad. The tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa, is officially open, and the long-running TV series Lost has just ended. Meanwhile, in a tiny new studio over in Ukraine, a group of developers that had previously worked on the cult classic Stalker series are about to launch their first game. This game is Metro 2033.
Пошел нахуй, дал ебаный пидорас, сука, блядь, пидорас, сука, блядь.
First of all, what is Metro 2033? Well, it is a survival horror game set in the metros of post-apocalyptic Moscow, Russia. And these are also based on books written by Russian author Dmitry Glukhovsky, who himself was actually inspired to write the Metro books after having played the first Fallout game and reading other books in a similar genre by Roger Zelazny as well as Ray Bradbury. However, while Fallout as a series has multiple banger games and overall has a more goofy story and world, Metro is a little bit different. See, the game is far more linear, it is not really an RPG, and instead, Metro tries to tell a more grounded story set within Eastern Europe with all the grunge and gopniks that you can imagine. Either way though, I think the biggest game though that people normally compare Metro to has got to be the Stalker series. Now, the interesting thing is that Stalker and Metro are sort of connected, and the reason for this is that the studio that created Stalker actually ended up being the studio that fired a bunch of employees, which created 4A Games, the studio that ended up creating the Metro series. But the games themselves do have obvious similarities. The first one has got to be the fact that both games are set in a post-apocalyptic Eastern Europe. That's kind of evident. The fact that there are mutants and radiation and all these sort of things are present in both games. However, there is a bit of a difference though, and that's going to be with the actual gameplay. See, Stalker as a game is more open world and sort of open-ended. The story in the game is not really that special. It's more about all the other things you can do. However, Metro as a game is more grounded. The story is linear. The gameplay isn't really RPG the way that Stalker is. And I think this is actually a good thing. So today I want to take a moment and I want to talk about why I think Metro is apocalyptic horror done right. So if you guys are ready, sit back, relax, and let's dive into Metro 2033 and Last Light. Exodus, I'll do in a different video. Let's get started. So the first game will be Metro 2033. Now, I should point out that I've been playing the Redux version, which was a re-release of the original Metro 2033 from 2010. See, the Redux does change a few things. Primarily, I would say, is the graphics, but part of the changes in the Redux are also made to make the game easier to play from a survival standpoint. Because of this, I'll be playing the game on the highest difficulty, that being the survival mode on Ranger Hardcore, which makes the experience much more difficult with reduced ammo and less overall HP. And I'll talk further about the Redux version of Metro when we get to Last Light.
You left your home station. Do you ever think we'll end up in a place like this?
Starting off, we find ourselves in a flash forward, playing as Artyom, the main protagonist of the whole Metro series. Now, he's grown up majority of his life in the Metro and just longs to see the world outside. Now, as we make our way through the tunnels, we encounter the game's first enemy type, that being the Nosalis. And their Russian name is actually Nosach, which is a way of saying the one with a big nose. And it makes sense because these things are really ugly and resemble more or less malformed rats. Heading outside, we are together with a man named Miller, and with the help of two of our comrades in a truck, we are able to fend off and survive an onslaught of Nosalis. But eventually they do surround us, and before you know it, we wake up in a bed. This is where our story actually starts, and also it's one of my favorite sections of the Metro games. Basically, walking around the bunkers and the populated spaces where we can stop and interact with NPCs, who will do respond and talk to you slightly. We can also witness the children making drawings of some sort of creature, which we have yet to meet, but that will be relevant for later. The fact of the matter is that being able to take a minute in between the game's shooting segments to simply just enjoy the tranquility of the Metro is necessary. It gives us a stark image of what your Metro is like, crammed and very difficult to traverse.
Welcome to Exhibition Hunter.
Together, Artyom and his stepfather Alex go to meet up with Hunter, a man belonging to the Spartans, one of several factions that can be found in the Metro. And honestly, one of the highlights of this game, since each faction has something unique to them and also displays perfectly how humans, even after nuking each other to death, will still create separate groups to fight amongst each other.
Artyom, I met a trader selling old postcards of New York City. I thought of your wall.
Hunter tells us about the Dark Ones, a weird new race of mutated creatures that have been causing havoc along the Metro. It seems like Hunter wants to do something about them, but before we can finish up our conversation, we get ambushed by a group of Nosalis. We're actually able to shoot them through the vents, which I didn't realize the first time. And before you know it, the mutants have breached the outer gates, and we have to rush alongside the others to help out and stop whatever's coming our way. What we witness here is a horrific sight of multiple fallen people and soldiers. Hunter then asks Artyom to take on the task of bringing the information about the Dark Ones to Colonel Miller in Polis. And to prove that we are sent by Hunter, he also gives us his dog tag. And just as we see him leave, this might be the last time we'll lay our eyes on him.
This threat must be eliminated, no matter the cost. Eliminated. Understand?
So, in between each section or chapter in the game, we get a few small voice lines of Artyom describing his current situation as well as the direction of where he's headed next. And it's a good way for us to see how big the Metro is because it really is large. And if you compare it to the real, actual Moscow Metro, it is pretty comparable. The Metro Moscow is massive. Once more, we awaken back in our little shed in Exhibition Station, which is our home station. We make our way through the tight corridors that connect the place, and we meet all kinds of people along the way, even a group of inmates that are locked away as well, before we run into a man who doesn't have enough money, so he asks us if we can give him some cash, or rather bullets, because in this game, bullets serve as currency. So we just oblige, we give him some cash, and he buys something for his kid. Now, eventually, we also reach the market district, and here we're able to stock up on resources, and I'll tell you right now, if you play the game on higher difficulties, it can get quite bothersome if you don't have enough ammo, so it'll definitely be worthwhile to stock up as soon as possible. At the armory, we're able to pick up our first proper weapon, the Bastard, a makeshift SMG that has great rate of fire but easily jams and overheats on you, so not the best gun in the world. We also get a gas mask, which is necessary for whenever we venture into radiation hot zones and anywhere above ground. Before leaving Exhibition Station, Artyom actually pays a visit to his stepfather, who seems to be worried for Artyom. But he also understands that the task of bringing the information to Miller in Polis was something specifically given to Artyom. So he lets his stepson go. Eventually, we reach the handcars by the metro tracks. Here we meet up with a group of people who are also headed towards Polis, and some other areas of the metro as well. So together, the four of us set out on our journey.
Buying merchandise. Well, I bet you've seen a few places then.
This caravan will be the first time that Artyom leaves the safety of his own exhibition station.
Caravan got stuck near Alexeyevskaya. A tunnel collapsed or other shit. You have to use a service tunnel bypassing Alexeyevskaya.
On the way, it turns out that the original tunnel we were going to be using had actually collapsed, so instead we're urged to take a different tunnel, but it isn't as well lit, and even our guide has a generally creepy vibe about it. So we'll quickly come to realize that our decision was probably a bad one. Making our way down the tunnel, things start to get weird. All of our comrades slowly start to faint and lose consciousness, and we witness a strange light beaming with electricity in the distance. This, my friends, is an anomaly, also known as a dark star, which are an extremely dangerous phenomenon that can be found all around the metro. Now, for now, Artyom and we, the player, don't have any way of dealing with these things, so instead we simply get knocked out.
Over here! If we are to survive, this threat must be eliminated, no matter the cost. Eliminate.
While we faint, we start dreaming and witnessing some sort of memory, or possibly a premonition, of a hunter who's facing off against one of the Dark Ones before we awaken once more. It seems that everybody is alive for now, but strange noises can be heard in the distance, and it looks like another onslaught is coming our way in the form of a group of Nosalis. For a part here in this section, we actually lose one of our companions and also get thrown off the handcar and have to, for a short time, fight our way through it alone. This is something that happens in the game a lot, where it separates you from other NPCs, but it's fine as we manage to catch up to the others.
Don't use a flamethrower, please!
Luckily, we were able to reach the first stop of our journey, Riga Station, where the guards outside actually help us out by shooting and blasting the mutants with fire. We find ourselves sitting with the others, having a drink while casually getting hyped up for fighting our way through the anomaly, as well as the Nosalis. Now, this is also the first time where we realize that our interaction with the anomaly didn't actually affect us the same way it affected the others, and this is an important highlight about Artyom. Now, leaving the others, we walk around and witness another kid drawing what seems to be one of the Dark Ones, before getting stopped by actually one of the little kids.
Hey, there's a man at the Black Street waiting for you.
Following the kid around, we reach a man named Bourbon, cause of course he's gonna be named after a whiskey.
Listen, I need to get to Dry Station for some business, but this rat hole is on lockdown.
Bourbon tells us that he needs to get to Dry Station for some business, which definitely doesn't sound sketchy, as the fastest way for him to get to Dry Station is through one of the cursed tunnels, or a tunnel literally called Cursed Tunnel. And the reason for this is because the rest of Riga Station is currently on a security lockdown because of us, because of the anomaly as well as the Nosalis. So Bourbon can't leave. Instead, he will use the Lost Tunnels, which are considered to be too dangerous, but since we have survived the anomaly before, he assumes that Artyom will be enough to keep them both alive. So before we leave Riga Station, I want to point out that there's actually an event in Riga Station which can be easily missed if you don't bother exploring it, and this is particularly a weird one. There's a woman named Nikki, which you can actually solicit for the Devil's Tango, but when she leads you to her room, she asks you to close your eyes, and before you know it, when you wake up, you're just seeing a big bulky man in front of you who knocks you out, and waking up, you have all your money stolen, or your MGR, your military-grade ammo, which serves as currency. I actually totally skipped over this part when playing the first time through the game, but on the second playthrough, I decided to get my ass whooped and robbed. Together with Bourbon, we enter inside of the Lost Tunnels. Things are honestly quite decrepit and broken down here. It's noticeably filled with corpses and just bodies left behind, and it's a place that shouldn't be traveled. Bourbon even makes fun of other people thinking that they hear strange noises of the dead, and the dead speaking to them down in these tunnels.
They say if you listen long enough, you can hear the voices of the dead. What bullshit.
Exploring down here, there are a few areas in the Lost Tunnels where we can split away from Bourbon, but all this does is offer us some tiny amount of exploration to find ammo, or just a way for us to get attacked on our own, so it's best to just stick with our friend for now. Eventually, we reach a bandit outpost with a tripwire, which is actually where the game finally teaches us about human traps. You see, the game has two different kinds of traps. Sound traps, which are empty cans hung up to make noise, as well as tripwires with hand grenades or explosives attached to them as a way to be harmful and take us out as we make our way around this place. Now, this whole place is just crawling with blind bandits, and even Bourbon tells us that we should approach things carefully, which is again a good moment for me to mention and bring up the game's morality system. You see, every time you sneak up against an enemy, specifically human enemies, you'll get the option of either killing your opponent, where you stab them to death, or simply knocking them out. Now, the reason this option exists is to determine if you will get the game's good or bad endings, as there are two endings in this game. You see, for the good ending, you have to make sure you play the games almost entirely without killing any humans and keeping your mutant killing to a minimum. But for the rest of the ending, basically just the bad ending, you can blast through everything, since I decided that just seemed like the most fun way to go through it this time around. So that made sense. I blasted through every single enemy. Reaching a large bridge, our enemy types are now both a mix of humans and mutants, and having fought our way through all of them, things don't get any better, as there seems to be a cave-in, and the only way for us to go is this one path, almost too convenient, especially because it looks like a trap to lure us in. Rushing through the deeper parts of the tunnel, we reach a room where the door seems to be blocked. We can take some time to pick up resources while we're here, but there's also a dreamscape moment where Artyom is transported to. Here, we need to rush through and help Bourbon open the gate, as we both will die otherwise. I let myself actually die once here just to see what happens, and for it to take place, you simply just need to not do anything in the game. But if you rush towards the gate and open it, both you and Bourbon will survive. Opening the gate, we're able to get away from the Nosalis just as they're trying to reach us, and even Bourbon feels a bit strange about what just took place. Finally, it seems like we have once again reached a safe location, that being Market Station. But before we can enter the gate, it needs to be opened for us, and it seems like Bourbon knows the people on the other side. So, for now, we hold off the Nosalis for a few minutes before being saved. However, it does seem like Bourbon has a weird or strained relationship with these people.
Are my eyes playing tricks? Bourbon, old friend, is that you? And I've given up hope of ever seeing you alive again. Simon, look who the snout scared at.
Goddamn, we stepped in this shit now. Hey, Mikhailovich, what a coincidence. I was just coming to visit you.
Entering Market Station, we learn that it's under control of Hansa, the largest and the biggest faction in all of the Metro. And it also looks like Bourbon owes these guys some money, so things can get a bit rough for us. Since Bourbon already knows he won't be able to afford paying these guys, he tells us to go off and just restock on whatever we can before getting out of this place quickly. Making sure we get all the ammo we need, we quickly pay some of the guards to let us out before making an escape out of Market Station right before the Hansa guards catch up to us. Now, we're above ground for the first time.
Move it, kid.
This moment is honestly one of the most beautiful in all of Metro. Exiting the Metro into the dead city of Moscow, Bourbon tells us,
So that's the dead city, grunted Bourbon. Welcome home, Artyom.
this one sentence is honestly amazing, and it sets the tone for what's to come. Even though this place has been destroyed and nothing remains of the beauty that once could have been, it's still beautiful to Artyom, who hasn't seen real light in his life. But we quickly learned why this place is named a dead city, as when we try to jump across the short bit of water, the ledge breaks off, and we get separated from Bourbon when falling into water. Here we meet the Metro game's probably hardest and some of the most annoying enemy types, the demons. Now, these things are flying creatures that swirl all around you and grab you by the arms while also flinging you a long distance. And honestly, I got stuck for a while here with this one single demon before finally being able to slip away from it. To be honest, fighting demons is not worthwhile, as they are bullet sponges that eat up all your ammunition. Now, this is the second time the game has split us from a friend and forced us to explore on our own, and this does happen a lot in Metro. You'll oftentimes be split away from the AI and NPCs and have to do things on your own. Now, we also need to make sure that we keep track of our oxygen and wipe our mask. You see, in Metro, the actual system that is used is a filter system, which gives you a certain amount of minutes that you have on your gas mask. And if the minutes run out, guess what? You also die. So you have to be very efficient with how you use it. And this is one of those things that's different in Redux versus the original game. In Redux, you have a lot more air to work with, and the game is a little bit more sparing and more friendly towards you. However, since we're playing on a higher difficulty, it still ends up being relatively hard, so we have to go through it quickly. Also, I just love that this mask wiping is a feature in the game. Yes, this stays throughout all the games. You basically have the ability to just wipe your mask off. Also, the game has a directional system where you have to use the watch on your actual arm to know which direction to go in, as well as an indicator that specifically glows blue if an enemy is close by and can spot you. And this system, this exact system of changing your gas mask as well as wiping the gas mask and even having the visibility indicator, all these things are the same from Metro 2033 all the way to Metro Exodus, which I love because that makes all three of the actual Metro games feel consistent. It feels like they're in a consistent, similar world where things aren't just drastically changing from one game to the next. But I'll talk further about this a bit later. For now, we're either going to be having to sneak or fight our way through the waves of Nosalis. We also find a pneumatic rifle, the Tikhar, which is a basically air gun that is silent and accurate, but doesn't do much damage and also requires pumping for it to be used. Having fought our way through some of these things and snuck by a few Nosalis, we finally meet up with Bourbon again. But before we can get down into the metro once more, we have to fight off a massive wave of both demons and Nosalis that are on our tail. Having fought them off and basically used up most of our ammo, we're able to finally escape. Chapter 3 is Khan. Now, it finally seems that we are close to Dry Station, but something interesting that Artyom points out here is that somehow the metro feels safer than the above world, which kind of struck me as being sort of sad, as usually underground would be where we humans find most of our fears, the darkness, the unknown, but in some twisted way, it has now become a shield, a way to feel safety. However, before we can get inside of Dry Station fully, Bourbon gets caught by bandits. So, our task is to save him. Once more, the game offers us the option to either take on the enemies in a stealthy way, as there are actually back paths as well as side ways for us to use as a means to take down enemies without killing them. However, I prefer blasting my way through everything, so that's exactly what I do. Finally getting to the room where Bourbon is being kept.
Did you bring with you, bastard? Answer, suka, or I will shot you! What? Who is it? Who is it? One night! Hypocrite Bourbon, who?
Artyom!
Who the fuck?
Yeah, Bourbon is unfortunately killed, but a brand new helper NPC joins us. This is Khan, a character that is kind of relevant throughout both of the first two Metro games. Now, for now, Khan tells us that we should follow him if we wish to stay alive. Khan is a weird man. Artyom can even tell that himself, and he even felt Khan's presence while fighting the bandits earlier. And honestly, Khan is a really strange fella. He has a weird connection to the Metro, as well as the creatures and monsters that haunt the deepest parts of it. He's almost in tune on a spiritual level with everything that can be found in the Metro.
Some say it's the voice of the tunnels. Others consider it to be a form of psychic influence.
And this is actually where we get our first taste of the Metro's paranormal phenomenons. Similar to the anomalies from earlier, here we run into the ghosts, which are shadows of people who died in the Metro but aren't able to cross over. Khan points out that if you listen to their wailing for too long from the pipes, it might even kill you. At several points, we are instructed to simply stand still and let the ghosts pass instead of fighting them. In one of the Metro carriages, I actually get stuck in a bunch of cobweb, which I didn't realize for a very long time that I simply need to use my lighter to get rid of. Speaking of which, the lighter is a great way to light up your path in case you don't have battery left in your flashlight, which also, by the way, you can charge your flashlight using the game's charger. This is a universal charger that's used all the time to charge up any batteries. We even run across a ghost train in these tunnels before we run across a room with blood all over the ground. Khan can sense an enemy on the other side of the door. Fighting through the mutants here, we learn the dead people in these rooms are all from the Cursed Station, a station that we'll learn more about soon. Back onto the Metro tracks, we once more run across an anomaly, but now we know exactly what to do. Khan tells us that we should simply stay still and let the anomaly pass. If we move or even shoot at the anomaly, it will be angered and end our lives very quickly.
Artyom, what are you doing?
The game even teaches us here how the anomaly can be used to our advantage to defeat the horde of Nosalis hunting us. This is something that you don't even get to do a lot in Metro 2033, only really once, but in the third installment of the games, Metro Exodus, you can actually use this quite often to your advantage. By pulling waves of Nosalis towards an anomaly, you can let the anomaly kill them instead of you doing it yourself. Finally, we find a rail car. Getting onto this one, we can make our escape. Our next stop is Cursed Station, a place aptly named due to it being the, only station that is in constant state of survival to not get destroyed. We rush together with Khan over towards a group of soldiers, trying to hold off the mutants leading into Cursed Station. We are able to actually pick up a ton of ammunition and resources here before Khan tasks us to blow up 2 different sides of the tunnels to stop the onslaught from coming our way. For a long time here, I actually got lost. I didn't really figure out exactly what I had to do, eventually noticing that, okay, I have to go to both sides, left and right, and put these giant explosive canisters. And every time you do this, another wave of Nosalis will attack you. If you try to go into the center section, there are actually ghosts that will block you from being able to go down into the tunnel. So, after actually setting all the explosives, we blow up the tunnels. We now have to part ways with Khan. He needs to stay and help the people of Curse Station. Meanwhile, instead, he sends us down the hole that I previously mentioned, which wasn't able to be entered due to the ghosts blocking our way. But now that Khan is here, he's able to part the way and allow us to enter into it. Inside, the room is found with a worshipping altar that was made to honor those who had lost their lives. Khan even allows us to take a special ladder that will lead us to the armory, a station where all guns in the metro are created. But before we leave, Khan also tells us that we're an important person and that we need to decide what kind of future we want to create. On our way to Armory, a station that, again, is just filled with all the Metro's weapons, a man named Andrew the Smith is who Khan told us to look for, as apparently he can help give us passage to Polis Station.
Who goes there? Stand still. Hey, loosen up. It's a human.
But we quickly learn that Armory, which is considered a free station, is under the watchful eye of the Reds, aka the communist faction found within the Metro. The Reds as a faction are pretty straightforward. They are the communists of this game. They're trying to bring back the communist era and create a almost like mini Soviet Union down in the Metro. At the end of the day, they are ran the same way as every other group. They're trying to vie for power and control, which again is so bizarre because the world already ended and still there exists a power struggle.
Lay off. I'll come quietly.
Making our way through the station, we just happen to accidentally go into a room where the Reds are interrogating a man, and due to our poor timing, we are seen as his co-conspirator, and together with him, we're able to beat the shit out of these guys and make a run for it. Now, rushing through the armory, we are dragged into one of the rooms. Luckily for us, the person that saved us is none else than Andrew the Smith, the man that Khan told us to search for.
He was with me. I had been rescued by Khan's friend, Andrew the blacksmith. He would prove to be my ticket out of the communist station.
Lucky for us, Andrew is able to get us out of the armory, but first we have to make a quick trip through the whole station and once more use the market area to stock up on bullets and upgrades to any of our weapons. Now, speaking of upgrades, the game does have an upgrade system, which isn't the largest or biggest, but still offers an enough variety of things that you can improve and change about your weapons, like adding any sort of scopes, as well as changing different bullet options, as well as adding silencers. Lucky for us, Andrew is about to help us get out of the station by hiding us underneath one of the large rail cars that's about to be filled with the Red soldiers, which are all headed towards the battlefield. Now, this is a location where the Reds are currently fighting against the Fourth Reich, another one of the factions found in the Metro, and arguably one of the worst groups that you can be dealing with down here because they're clearly based on a no good group from 1940, so you get what I mean. Now, funny enough, while on the railcar's bottom, we also find a Metro 2034 sequel book just laying in front of us as a funny little Easter egg. However, a bump eventually causes Artyom to fall off the railcar, and now things are about to get rough for us. Chapter 4 is called War, and it makes sense. Things are about to get really hard for us, especially if you want to stealth your way through this game, as what we're about to enter is a literal battlefield, taking place between the Reich as well as the Reds. Now, each side uses weird mini tanks and railcar gunners to attack the other side. We as Artyom can either blaze through all of them again, both Reds and Reich, but stealth is another option. The frontline level actually has to be one of the best chapters and levels overall within Metro. Like, just being able to be between this battle taking place between two different groups, where normally in games, you're playing for either one of the sides, but in this case, we're literally right in the middle, and our task is to go through and take them all out, or simply just try to survive. Like I said, the stealth part of this mission can be really difficult, and some people even need to look up guides, like myself, to actually see what best way to approach it, because it is really hard to stealth this section. So instead, I just guns blaze my through this on my regular playthrough. After making it to the Reich side of the battle, because both ends of these bridges and these tunnels are controlled by either side, because yes, it is the literal line that separates them, well, once we reach the Reich side, we think we're in safety. But when you think you've just made it out, the Reich catches us and knocks us the hell out. Waking up, the two Reich soldiers are about to execute Artyom, but in the back we can spot two guys dressed in Spartan gear from Polis Station. Lucky for us, these are the good guys, and after having saved Artyom, he shows the dog tag from Hunter. We now have a proper help to get us to Polis, so we can deliver the message to Miller. The two guys we're with are Ullman and Pavel. Both of them are rangers from Polis, and together we're going to be heading towards Polis by using one of the machine gun trolleys and make our way out of this war zone. However, one of them, Ullman, is going to split away from us, so only me and Pavel remain. As we make our way through the first checkpoint run by the Reich, we instantly run into an issue, as Pavel doesn't know how to handle them, so instead, we start blasting. This section is honestly just really fun. It's nothing to write home about. It's kind of just reminding me of one of those like on-the-rails shooting segments in Call of Duty, or if you've ever played any arcade games where you shoot, it kind of feels a little bit like that. Now, just as we think we're safe and away from the soldiers of the Reich, we're attacked by mutants once more. This time, however, Pavel isn't able to actually make it out, as one of the Nasalis drags him overboard, and he takes his own life with a hand grenade. The game once more puts us on our own, and I will say the moment where you are alone are far more terrifying and atmospheric, and knowing that your lack of ammo can mess you up and mess up your entire run at any second really makes every step you take even more anxious. Another thing about these tunnels is for me the fact that all the detail that was spent to make each place have a almost eeriness with bodies littering the floor just gives me the EBGBs walking around here, and I like the detail they put into it. Now, of course, there aren't a million different like secrets and Easter eggs you can find, but there are definitely small things that can be noticed here. Getting out of those tunnels, we reach a checkpoint. Speaking to the captain here, he leads us to a squad known as the Children of the Underground. Together, we'll be making a final stand alongside these guys to hold off the mutants coming this way. The same mutants that took Pavel from us earlier. Fighting back and holding these things off, unfortunately, a lot of the soldiers here get injured or killed, and once again, we're tasked with trying to make our way to Polis on our own with the information for Miller. Running through the station, everything's on fire, which kind of made me wonder who actually did this. Was it the mutants? Or maybe this was caused by human hands. Hearing a noise from the distance and the other side of a door, we find a kid. His name is Sasha, and his uncle was supposed to actually take care of him, but he's been killed. So our task is to take Sasha with us and keep him safe. Now, I'll be real with you, Sasha roasts you a lot and talks too much. So I understand most players just want the kid off their back. However, he is kind of fun and useful as well to have. Along the way, you are also able to pick up these logs, which actually contain thoughts that Artyom has throughout the games. It can help give you a deeper understanding of what he thinks, as well as what the game's world is like. Now, I made sure to read all the logs, and something that stood out to me is the idea that this kid only knows the metro, and that to this kid, Sasha, death is very common. Something that is both grim, but yet shows the resilience of humanity to keep existing even through literal hell. And so, this kid has only grown up down here. I think you should definitely read the logs if you want to understand the world of Metro a bit further, because the games can only give you so much with the story you see. There are even more details in the books.
I'm not allowed to touch it, but there's ammo in that locker.
Sasha, by the way, he does come in handy, as he will point out and mention when he sees wires, which those wires specifically are booby traps. Now, the kid doesn't realize that's the case, but it does help us as the player pay better attention and notice little things. This is again a small detail, but I think it's really cool. Having made it out of the worst sections, we're able to scale a giant silo. Looking up, it is really interesting because we can see the sky, something the kid is not even really used to. As we get to the top though, we reach Sasha's mom, who's waiting, as well as a group of soldiers. His mother offers us to take ammo from her, and here the game actually offers you a bit of a moral dilemma. Now, if you take the ammo from her, then it seems like we only saved the kid for cash, but if we don't take it, she might feel offended. This is even something that Artyom mentions in one of the logs that you can read. Now, I accidentally took the money, yoink, and one of the men actually shows us the way through to a different underground station, which leads us to Black Station. Now, here we have a short minute to catch our breath. We can see that the caravan of people here are stuck and are simply waiting to be able to move on further. And again, even in the darkest depths of the underground, we can still see humans cooking, playing guitars, and trying to make any sort of semblance of regular life a reality down here. After stocking up on ammunition, the gate is open for us. We're able to leave. What waits for us next is more or less even more hell. Here we are fully surrounded by soldiers of the Reich, and we're able to shoot out the lights to allow for sneaking, but given that I've already gone all guns blazing before, I pretty much go down that same path once again. Honestly, it's not the recommended way to play the game, but I had already decided to go for the bad ending, so it really didn't make a difference for me in this first playthrough. Outside, it seems like the Reich basically has a large swath of space under their control. They're trying to use the above ground as a way to gain access to other stations from the above rather than going through the tunnels. This is a way for them to, I guess, compete against the Reds. Now, climbing through the broken down buildings, we're able to use our compass to show us the direction that we're supposed to be headed in. Also, something I should mention here is that the watch that you are wearing is super useful. Again, it stays throughout all the games, and there's also a little bit of a detail, which is that you can tell what difficulty you're playing in by simply looking at the watch, as it will look different depending on which difficulty you're playing in. So, in this case, we're going to continue down as we spot some enemies. Lucky for us though, this next location is filled with both demons and humans, so we can just let the mutants do the work for us and take out the Reich soldiers instead of us wasting ammo.
Who is it? Surrender and you won't get hurt. I swear.
Finally, we run across Ullman again. We tell him about the current situation and what has happened, and the fact that we lost Pavel, and the people from the Reich that are circling the area. He hands us a weapon with a silencer, and next, we've got to deal with a heavily fortified section filled with Reich soldiers. Now, fighting through the waves of these guys is honestly pretty hard, and if you don't have a lot of ammo to work with, it can get really, really difficult. Lucky for us though, we eventually reach Ullman, and once again together we use a railcar to get out of this place. For the first time in a long time, Artyom can finally rest for a bit, and this is when we get another dream sequence.
Usual mutant creatures. This is something else. Something much worse. Fear.
We're weak.
What is he doing?
But, you know, it's not any more evil than, say, fire. It all depends on your point of view. Try to get a better understanding of things before you make your judgment. Let's move out now.
It seems even when resting, Artyom has to deal with some kind of hell. Chapter 5, which is aptly named Hope, is where we finally reach Polis Station. This is where the Rangers, the Spartans, basically reside. And of course, this is the location we've been trying to reach for such a long time. Finally, we get to meet Miller and deliver the message to him. Now, this might be a good moment to talk a bit about the characters in the Metro. See, first of all, Artyom as a main character is a silent protagonist, and we only really hear him during the game's chapter changes, which I personally like as it's a good way to still give us a connection to Artyom and make him feel real and human, while also letting us feel like we're the ones in control whenever we are playing any gameplay section. As for other people in the game, it is honestly as realistic as it gets. The groups, factions, and struggle for power, as absurd as it may seem, is exactly what humans keep doing. They just keep fighting and trying to gain power, even after blasting each other to near extinction. Metro almost serves like a microcosm of our real world. Alliances, enemies, and conflicts. Talking to Miller, he now knows and has learned about the existence of the Dark Ones, and the plan is to call for an emergency meeting with the leaders of Polis to see how to deal with this situation. However, just like in real life, the politicians don't want to do anything and prefer to stay idly by, so Miller is pissed. We decide to instead take on the task of doing this ourselves. The plan is to head towards the Moscow State Library, which might hold the key to a secret base known as D6 that could be containing missiles that could be used to wipe out the Dark Ones. So our task for now is to head there and scout that situation, with Miller coming after shortly. Now for this section of the game, I decided to actually fully stealth my way through, as it was much easier to avoid the Nosalis while they were simply just jumping past us. And honestly, I think the best way to experience this game is a mix of both stealth and combat. If you try to stealth all the time, things can get a bit tedious and honestly a bit difficult in Metro, but honestly, I think if you use it sparingly when needed, it makes the experience far more interesting. Sometimes you have to blast your way through, and other times it's better just to use stealth. While making our way towards the library, we can hear shots in the distance, most likely from people like Miller. Reaching the entrance, it is locked, and a demon manages to grab us, and a bunch of Nosalis surround us. So we have to rush towards the entrance again and fight off as many of these as possible. Thankfully, Miller shows up and we're able to get inside of the library, but the demons are still after us, so we have to be quick. which has to find a different path. And after doing a little bit of a parkour section, we're able to open up the door into the library. Funny enough though, one of the rangers alongside us, named Danila, decides to sift through some of the books in the library while we're finding a different road. And while doing this, he actually finds a book named Roadside Picnic. And he points out that, it's something familiar. So funny enough, the thing here is that Roadside Picnic is a book that was actually written and is loosely the inspiration for the Stalker video games. And it's basically what they loosely based the actual whole video game series on. So it's a kind of fun little reference that the developers made already back then to the game they had previously been, part of. Another interesting aspect of the library is that most of the corpses found in here are frozen soldiers from the Reich, which is weird as Polis and the Rangers are the ones in control of the library above the ground. And they're also the only people who supply books for the Metro. So it's a bit weird that they've somehow managed to let the Reich slip through this close. Now, here there is actually a strange difference between the regular video game of Metro 2033 and the Redux version of the game. In the Redux version, the models of the Reich soldiers, the frozen bodies, are instead changed to be regular Hansa or Red Line soldiers instead. So I don't know if this is an oversight, but nonetheless. Shooting the big chandelier, we're able to access the next room, but just as we do this, Danila is attacked by a demon, which injures him. Due to the fact that he's now injured, Miller won't be able to come with us, and we're instead tasked to handle the library on our own. But before we leave, Miller does warn us of the Librarian, an enemy type that we have yet to meet. You see, the Librarians are probably the single most terrifying creature in all of Metro. To start with, these things call the library their home, and they don't appear anywhere else in the game besides the library. They can also be found in the Ranger DLC for Last Light, the second game in the Metro series, but within Metro 2033, they only appear in this one section. Now, what makes them so terrifying is how much damage they can deal to you and how intelligent they are. Compared to Nosalis or demons, which operate much more in an animalistic way, the Librarian moves and acts more like a human, closely resembling the actions of a gorilla. And we can't forget that they also have insane agility, as they can jump extremely high. Now, walking around the library, it's best not to fight these guys, as they can easily eat up our bullets like they are nothing. They are literally perfect bullet sponges and just terrifying. However, we can simply just walk past them. Eventually reaching the underground parts of the library, we are faced with the second form of the Librarians, which are the Dark Forms. Now, these ones sleep in their nests at the bottom here, and it's best not to disturb them, as they will be far more aggressive and will tear your limbs off if you go too close. Finally, we find a box labeled D6, and we got our hands on the document that was needed. This will now give us the location of the D6 secret missile base. Rushing outside, Miller and the others show up in a giant dune buggy, so we jump onto it and make our way to a church. Now, this church actually serves as a local outpost and is a place that you will see both in Metro 2033 and Last Light. And this is a place where the Rangers actually do a bunch of exploration above the ground. Inside, we're able to pick up night vision goggles, which are specifically used to look during dark sections of the game, but I will point out right now that the night vision goggles in 2033 are not really that much of a useful feature, and that's mainly because in 2033, these things are given to you way too late. I feel like if they had given you the goggles much earlier in the game, they would have been more useful, but I don't see much of a use case here. However, what is useful is some of the new rifles. One of them is the Absatz, which is a buckshot firing heavy machine gun that does insane amounts of damage, as well as the Kalash 2012, which according to the flavor text in the game was an assault rifle that was used by the army at the start of World War III in the Metro universe. We're fully stocked up and ready. We talk to Miller, who has the location of the D6 base. We also meet up with Khan again, and once more Khan tells us about some of the more supernatural elements that we've been experiencing. Khan definitely does seem somewhat against the idea of going after the Dark Ones. He warns Artyom of what he might become if he keeps up going on this specific path that he set himself on. Finishing up our conversation with Khan, we make it down into the underground and take a metro rail car towards D6. Chapter 6 is of course named D6, which makes total sense. Now, while on the railcar, Artyom suddenly has another supernatural experience, which brings him to another dreamscape. Waking back up, it seems like Artyom is fine, but it doesn't take long before our little ragtag group of soldiers reaches their first obstacle. It's a door, and it won't open. And what's happening behind us is another wave of Nosalis coming our way. And we're able to pick up a flamethrower here at the back of the railcar and use that to stop them as best as we can. Lucky for us, the door eventually does come open, and inside we reach the dungeons. Now, this place is dark and abandoned, but there are still bodies which you can see littered around, which means that some stalkers and just people that have adventurers, I guess if you want to call them that, have actually gone even close to the entrance of D6, but never made it all the way there. Here we're able to open a large gate by activating one of the generators, which only works with the help of our universal charger, which again is such a cool device. It's a cool tool that can be used to charge your battery in the game, but also to charge machines and devices all around the metro. Now, the deeper sections of the metro are also filled to the brim with mutants, and together we're able to push through most of them. Along the way, however, we do lose one of our comrades, that being Boris, who takes his life with a hand grenade before the Nosalis can take him. Now, as you may notice, a lot of the Rangers have a tendency to kind of end their own lives with the help of hand grenades. I get the nobility and kind of warrior spirit, but damn, the man could have literally waited 2 seconds for me to stand up and save him. The deeper we go, the more enemies we start running into. Now, I will say that the team AI and like the general NPC AI is actually super useful and will drag aggro and attention away from Artyom and allow for you to take down the enemies much easier that way. However, at one point here, we get separated from the others as we crawl underneath the door that then gets blocked. This leaves us with close to 0 ammunition. We have to fend off against my least favorite enemy type in any video game, that being spiders. Now, I should point out that something here is a bit different. See, in Metro 2033, the original version from 2010, you don't actually run into spiders, which are known as spider bugs, but instead you run into what is known as the plated Nosalis. Now, these guys were the most powerful and rarest form of the Nosalis and only appeared in the vicinity of D6, and they function similarly to the spider bugs, which are both weak to light as their eyes have adapted to the darkness. So any light causes them to take damage and simply run away. Now, I personally didn't like this change. I think the plated Nosalis were much cooler of an enemy type, but the spider bugs are also a pain and kind of a disturbing enemy to deal with. So yeah, this is one of those moments where some of the changes that were made in the game from the original to the Redux version become far more evident. I would love to know what you guys think about all this, because personally, I didn't really like this change, especially since the spider bugs already are so prominent in Last Light, the second game. I would have preferred if we just kept the plated Nosalis. Making it out of the weird catacombs, we meet up with the others, where we learn that another one of the Rangers was lost, Stepan. We were never actually able to see his death as it happened off screen.
A sound from the tunnel. Can't you hear it? Something's approaching.
However, all of a sudden, a large rail car shows up, almost looking like a tram, which, once we jump onto it, will be leading us towards D6. Now, the D6 facility is huge, but the electricity is currently off, so together with Miller, we make our way down towards the control panel to turn the facility on. Using a quick activation sequence, we can now jump onto an elevator, which takes us just deeper and deeper into D6. Here, we can use one of these trolleys to open up the door leading to Mission Control Center. And here, we can launch the missile. However, there is something weird going on. It seems like one of the missile silos is on, every other one is offline. However, there is something else. The electricity stops working. So, to fix it, we have to go downstairs and turn on the backup generator. And you already know, the only person that's going to deal with this is going to be Artyom. Now, Miller does tag along, and we make our way down into the depths of D6 to figure out exactly what causes the electrical issue. On our way there, we have to deal with these things called amoebas. Now, these things are just giant blobs of just biomass, and whenever you do deal with them, you simply can just defeat them by throwing knives or shooting them with a single bullet. However, it's important, though, that you help out Miller, as he can actually be overwhelmed and killed by the amoebas, which will give you a game over screen. So, highly recommend that try to pay attention to Miller and don't let him die. There is actually an interesting thing that happens in this particular section of the game. On the intercoms, we can actually hear Ullman pulling a joke by pretending that he has awaited our arrival to D6 and that he is those called the Invisible Watchers. Now, funny enough, this is actually a reference to a real group in the Metro series. The Invisible Watchers are a group that doesn't really get brought up much in Metro 2033 or in Last Light. Besides this one single mention, but they are a group that exists in the shadows and has a big influence and impact on the events that take place within the Metro and the entire part of Russia. And I'm going to tell you right now, they do have a lot more of a relevant point and a relevant plot point within Metro Exodus, the third game. But it's still worthwhile just to mention their existence here because it carries heavy implications for further into the story. Reaching the end and the bottom of D6, we're faced with a giant amoeba which has turned into a big old biomass. Now, to defeat this thing, we have to use a giant crane that we guide towards 3 different reactor cells, which we can then pull up. In doing so, we're able to defeat the biomass. However, while doing it, we also have to make sure we are very quick with it because the biomass will be attacking us, and if we take too long, it will also kill us. Now, interestingly, we don't end up actually killing the biomass. Instead, we just weaken it to allow the generators to produce electricity. Miller even points out and mentions that he will return later to deal with the biomass and that the Dark Ones take priority right now.
Yes, with sword and fire, we'll win back the sky and the sun. We'll climb out of the dirt.
Back upstairs, we run into Ullman, who together with Vladimir will stay in D6. And the reason for this is because Miller and Artyom have to go to Ostankino's tower to activate the missile guidance system. This is actually the last time we'll ever see Ullman in the games, but he does leave us with a special present in the rail car, that being in the form of a gun, the standard Kalash 2012, and a revolver with a suppressor, as well as loads of ammo and filters and gas masks, which we'll be needing since we're about to go above ground for the next section. Putting the mask on with a new filter, we head back to where the game started, the prologue. Once more, we are back to being surrounded by Nosalis, just like the beginning of the game. We can see exactly what happened. Artyom and Miller were about to make it past them and reach the entrance just as they got surrounded and attacked. But eventually, we're able to get through with the help of the other Rangers. Making it up the tower, we are constantly attacked by the demons. One of them even manages to injure Miller to such an extent that he can't even continue further up with us. So, we have to climb the tower on our own. And I won't lie, it was honestly terrifying, and I was terrified most of the time. Even though it's a game, still seeing this height and moving around the very narrow spaces was honestly just terrifying, knowing that we could fall any second.
He brings death.
As we try to make progress towards the top, we keep being haunted by dreams of the Dark Ones. They keep trying to stop us from placing the missile guidance system. However, we still manage to set it up. But just as we do, the Dark One pulls us into another dreamscape. Now, this place is weird. Now, when we start off, we're in a dark room with 4 doors, and we have to figure out which direction to go in. If we take the wrong one, we die and we have to restart. But if we take the right one, we will non-stop be hunted by the Dark One, and it will keep stopping our direction no matter which way we go. So, eventually, we do reach the end of the dreamscape. As we fall down, looking up, we see none else than Hunter, who tells us,
If it's hostile, you kill it.
that single line of text goes so fucking hard. Now, this particular sentence is actually the Ranger code, a set of words that are basically supposed to be followed by all different Rangers. Hunter hands us the revolver, and we have the option of shooting the Dark One that slowly approaches us. Now, we can actually decide to not shoot it, and if we don't do this, we'll see our own death, where we're thrown off the tower. But if we shoot Dark One, Artyom finally awakens, and we witness as the missile launch hits the Dark Ones.
wise man once said, "He who leads a war for the love of his fellow men will defeat his enemies." I led my war protecting my family and friends, protecting my home, the metro. We had won. But to this day, I wonder, when we burned the Dark Ones from the face of the earth, was something lost as well?
So yeah, that is the bad ending of Metro 2033, also known as the Ranger ending. But I should point out that there are two endings in this game, and I'm going to show you the other one as well. The other one is called the Enlightened ending, and for this one, this ending just happens to have you make sure you play the game without killing anyone. You basically need to collect a bunch of positive morale points, which you get by simply making the right choices when they're offered to you. An example of this is basically you can give more moral points to yourself by handing money to homeless people during the station sections of the game. However, what happens in the Enlightened ending is that Artyom simply doesn't use the guidance system on the tower. You can hear the Khan's voice as well as a Dark One which whispers the message of, "We want peace." And you then have about 20 seconds to make the decision to either destroy the guidance systems, or the other option is to just let the system still shoot. If you stop it, then the Dark Ones on the surface will praise Artyom for his wisdom and mercy, and even Artyom will monologue about the fact that we humans had already destroyed the world once, and that he was not ready to do that to the world again. However, this good ending is not canon. The real ending is the Ranger ending, which is the most similar to what happens in the book. See, in the books, Artyom does launch the missile guide system, but just as he has some time to realize what he's done, he notices that it's a mistake and that they could easily work with the Dark Ones to build a better future, but it's already too late to stop it. So instead, he sits and watches as the missiles hit the botanical gardens, and the game gives us a short glimpse of Artyom's face before the game ends. That was Metro 2033 Redux. The game is honestly fantastic, but definitely not the best out of the three Metro games. I will say that some of the changes that were added in the Redux version of the game definitely are necessary. The Redux doesn't really change the story at all, but instead mostly just graphics, and that's most of the stuff that happens. However, the fact that they removed the plated Nosalis is something I personally didn't like, and also, the Redux 2033 was specifically made in the new Last Light engine, the same engine that was created for the Last Light game, and it made it so that Metro 2033 Redux ends up being more similar to that game, aka being a bit more easy and overall having far less survival aspects to it. However, to me, the experience of Metro isn't complete without playing the direct sequel to Metro 2033, that being Metro Last Light. I think Last Light has a better story than Metro 2033, but I do think Metro 2033 has better survival systems. Especially if you play the original version of the game and not the Redux, you will get a much better survival experience where you have more limited ammo, the enemies do even more damage, and things are just a little bit more rough. But honestly, even the Redux version combined with Last Light, which we're about to get into, is honestly fantastic. Now, before we move on to Last Light, I quickly just want to mention some of the Easter eggs and secrets that can be found in Metro 2033. So, one of these can actually be a really weird one, but it's just only found in the Russian dub of the game. But if you go to Riga Station, there is a guard here that will break the fourth wall. If you talk to him, he will eventually ask you, no, seriously, what do you expect to hear from an ordinary guard? Because, yeah, he's just a regular guard, so he kind of just messes with you. There's also a battery that has the text written on it that says, Shushanka invented it himself, made in 4A Games, which is a reference to, of course, one of the developers at 4A Games, who's one of the, I guess, most talkative members of the team. There's also a reference to Bioshock, which ended up being removed, but another reference that still is in the game is a connection to Half-Life. There's actually a body or a skeleton that can be found which holds a crowbar. Interestingly, if you think about this, yeah, that is the main weapon, the signature weapon of none else than Gordon Freeman from the Half-Life series. And there's also a corpse of Gordon Freeman that can be found as an Easter egg in the Stalker series games, which are developed by GSC. And of course, the people that work at 4A Games are former employees of that company. that ended up forming 4A Games. There's also a reference to a man named Dimitri Rise, which is a DJ. His DJ name is Din Rise. But yeah, there's actually a literal picture that can be found of him, which is super random. It's just kind of weird, but yeah, it was just a little favor due to Dimitri basically knowing the people at 4A Games Studio. But that doesn't end right there. There's also a reference to some of the stations in the literal Kiev metro. Instead of using the Pavletskaya station of Moscow in the metro for whole station, it was instead modeled after a different station, and I'm gonna butcher the name here, Kreskatsky station in the Kiev metro instead. But there's a few other references. There's a Left 4 Dead reference, with one of the hands missing the fingers, similarly to the artwork for Left 4 Dead. There's also a mummy reference, a literal, like, straight-up mummy found in the Dark Star level. It's one just stuck between some logs, and according to developers, they didn't want to, basically use an old model, so they decided to, just use it here and not let it go to waste, and so they just shoved it in here. There's also some other references. Screamers. There's an Easter egg referring to the 1995 dystopian science fiction film named Screamers. This can be found in the exhibition level, where you can see specifically two models of two people, like a child and a woman, that look oddly similar to the character from the movie. There's also a Star Wars reference that can be found. It's an Easter egg that refers to it in Riga Station. Basically, a retired IT system administrator begs for a spare, coin or more or less, or just an ammo. And when he gives it to him, or if you give it to him, he will say, "May the Force be with you," which is kind of funny. There's also a reference which I already mentioned before, but in the library, when you are going through there, one of your friends, Danil, will actually mention Roadside Picnic, the book that inspired the Stalker series, and what it's, loosely based on. Moving on from that, a lot of the subway cars that are found in Metro 2033 are based on the car type E Metro cars, which are currently actually used in Kiev and also in St. Petersburg. The last Easter egg that we see in Metro 2033 is actually a WALL-E Easter egg. And if guys, if you haven't seen the Pixar movie WALL-E, you will know that there is this one moment where he holds up a tiny little flower on screen, and guess what? You can actually find an old boot with the same looking flower growing out of it, which is kind of cute and is the final reference that we can see. The opening screen to Last Light is slightly different from the Metro 2033 one. See, the menu in 2033 had us launching from a relatively safe point of view, within an office, most likely owned by Alex, the stepfather of Artyom. Now, whereas in Last Light, the menu is us sitting in one of the trolley rail cars that is used a few times in 2033, but a lot more in Last Light. Also, a far larger amount of death is surrounding us in Last Light, in the intro even. Some of the things here are definitely reflective of the path that Artyom has been on since the beginning of the first game. He's no longer an innocent child or a young man. He's become a hardened soldier.
The Dark Ones. Huge, towering a full head over the highest man. Nightmarish creatures. Creepy as a man turned inside out. Monsters born to destroy us. The word was they were incredibly strong and unnaturally evil. That with bare paws they could tear armed men apart. That's all lies. Truth is even scarier.
Chapter 1, Introduction. See, in Last Light, we don't have chapters, but instead, each level has its own actual name. First one is Introduction, which begins with Artyom telling us about the Dark Ones and the events that have already taken place. Once we finally get to play, we're in control of Artyom himself, who's stationed on an outpost together with a group of other Metro residents. Now, while having a drink, the group suddenly gets attacked. We do have the option to not fire our guns, but if we do shoot, we'll eventually learn that our targets were not really monsters, but rather was our friends. Waking up from that nightmare, we find ourselves face to face with Khan from Metro 2033. It seems that we are in D6, the same base we helped Miller and the Rangers reach in the previous game. Now, talking to Khan, we tell him that there's a chance of the Dark Ones having survived. This makes Khan happy as he was fully against destroying them to start with. Checking around our little room, we can find all sorts of references. First of all is multiple postcards on the wall. Now, we already learned in Metro 2033, something that I didn't mention, is that Artyom actually collects these postcards, and we learned this as Hunter even hands one as a gift to Artyom when they meet. Moving around the base, there are tons of people that can be interacted with, but it's not really mandatory. Instead, we reach the armory, where we stock up once more on gas masks, filters, and of course weapons. Our weapon options this time around are far more varied, and we have also the Valve Rifle, the AK-47, and the RPK. Even the Shambler, which is a revolving shotgun, which we can pick up and choose from. This also makes sense because we are now essentially a ranger, so we have a much larger access and variety of tools at our disposal. Here we finally get to see Ullman again. However, he's only here to lead us alongside Khan to Colonel Miller.
Have you heard about Lesnitsky? What are you talking about? Check with the guards at the lab.
What the hell did he do?
On the way, we learn about a man named Lesnitsky from one of the guards that seems to have gone missing. This will be relevant for later, so keep it in mind. Throughout this short little walk and trip to Miller, we learn quite a few things. The station of D6 is massive, and it's more or less the new base of operations for Polis and the Order, and the whole of the Spartan Corps, more or less. But beyond that, we also learn that Khan is already aware of a remaining last Dark One, and so, well, he has a few plans for that.
Machines with different wiring. But somehow you, Artyom, have the common wire. The connection with the Dark Ones.
Essentially, he wants the Dark One to be kept safe. However, after talking to Miller, we quickly learn that he wants it eliminated, something Khan definitely disagrees with and is staunchly opposed to. After arguing for a while, Miller orders Artyom to eliminate the last remaining Dark One, with the help of his daughter Anna, who will serve as a sniper lookout while Artyom completes the task at hand. Now, Anna is an important character. For now, all she does is call Artyom a little rabbit and mock him for, well, just being who he is non-stop. Chapter 3, Ashes. This mission with Anna takes us to the Botanical Garden, the same place that we had previously nuked. However, on our way there, we run across a ton of bodies of people who have either been ended by the mutants or, I mean, even whole families that were taken out by the nukes. It was kind of disturbing seeing more or less a mother, father, and child all embracing each other just as the nuclear bombs had hit. Moving on from the tunnels, we reach the outside. So there is something interesting I want to point out. See, Last Light, unlike its predecessor 2033, actually features a set of DLCs and expansions, and one of these expansions actually takes place exactly here. See, while we make our way around the Botanical Garden as Artyom, Anna actually stays and watches above us and keeps us safe with suppressive sniper fire. And in one of the DLCs from the Chronicles DLC pack, you're able to play as Anna herself from this exact mission. Now, I'll talk further about the DLCs and the special missions at the end of this video. Now, we're getting attacked by a mutant that I've totally forgot to mention. That is the Watchmen. Now, these guys are weird mutants covered in dark and gray fur, and are super common on the above ground. They resemble canines in both looks and, well, kind of just also in behavior, and they tend to stay in packs and hunt in groups. So if you run across a single Watchman, it will most likely just run away from you. Heading deeper into the gardens, we finally spot the Dark One. Now, Anna tries to shoot it while we chase after it, and each time we get close enough, it gets away before we can grab it fully. Once more, the Dark One uses its psychic abilities, and we get to see the moment that Artyom destroyed all the Dark Ones. We witness how this little one was able to escape. Waking up, we see the Dark One in a cage, and us ourselves are being knocked out and taken away by soldiers who belong to the Reich once more. We find ourselves stuck inside of one of the detention facilities within the Reich station. We watch as the Reich soldiers conduct pointless experiments before they start executing prisoners. But in the heat of the moment, one of the prisoners, a communist, manages to break loose and help us escape. Jumping down the trash chute, we land on multiple bodies, all prisoners that had their lives snuffed out by the Reich. We quickly rush with our new friend Pavel and sneak around the guards as a way to scale the giant prison. Now, Pavel is a character that's going to stay with us for a while, and he belongs to the Reds. Now, as we're making our way up this giant complex, the prisoners that we pass will actually interact with us and either complain or tell us to not risk all of their lives. Now, the reason for this is because this section of the game has to be carefully done, because if you do get noticed, instead of shooting you, the guards will just put on the gas, which will kill everybody, including the guards themselves. This is like a sort of sacrifice for them in case they fail their mission of keeping everybody imprisoned. So yeah, you got to make sure you do this very stealthily. So with Pavel's help, we carefully take out all the guards and reach the top of the facility. Here we have access and also choice to make. Basically, if we enter inside, it'll be a control panel, and we have the option of either ignoring it, or we can click one of the buttons here to release all the prisoners out. Now, if we hit the big red button, it unlocks all the cells and every prisoner is able to escape. However, if we don't press it, all of them are left behind. And if you want to get the game's good ending, you're supposed to release the prisoners for positive moral points. And yes, I have to point out, the game does have a morality system. Choices you make will impact what ending you get. So this is one of the ending thingies that you have to do if you want to actually get the good ending.
Follow me, don't stop.
Making it out of the prison with Pavel, we walk amongst the Reich population, while their leader, the Führer, yeah, way too on the nose with that one. Well, there isn't much of a backstory about this guy, their leader, and most of what we've known about him is most likely just propaganda by the Reich upper leadership, as it seems. Now, listening to what the Führer is spouting, we can discern that the Reich plans to attack our new home base of D6, which is currently in control, of course, of Polis and the Order, as well as the Rangers. Now, their goal is to take it over due to its vast amounts of space and resources found within. In the heat of it all, Pavel freaks the whole crowd out by shooting off his gun, which allows us to slip out and run away. At the end, we reach a rail car after beating up a few guards and shooting a few of them, with one guard actually surrendering, which honestly makes the most sense. We don't make it far before there's a dead end. Getting off the rail car, we help Pavel get over a ledge, but once he does, on the other side, he seems to get caught by the soldiers. And like the good guy we are, we make sure to fight through a giant wave of enemies to try to save him. Now, the next two chapters, both 6 and 7, Separation and Facility, are kind of interesting. See, during this whole section, we're able to either approach the whole place using stealth or go guns blazing. Now, if you do the stealth option, there are things which will affect the ending for you. See, if you want positive morale points, you need to avoid death, and if you avoid killing one of the guys here reading in his bed, you gain all the moral points needed for it. So definitely just try not to shoot the guy in the bed at least. However, there's also a tiny little Easter egg that we found here. There's a guy listening to music on his headphones, and the song that he's jamming out to is called The Market, a song that's actually from the Metro 2033 soundtrack. Either way though, after going through this whole place and more or less killing most people in here, we end up finding Pavel. We break him out of his cell and we make a run for it. Now, Pavel has promised that he will help us get back to Polis, and we must inform Miller, of course, and the others about what has been planned to happen against, well, D6 from the Reich. Of course, there's no guarantees they will attack, but the fact that they're even considering it is interesting. We also hear from the intercom system that the Reich commander issued the order to turn off the lights in the tunnel that we just entered. And this is because this place is fully infested.
The hell? Oh, we just have to see about that. That's why the Nazis cut the lights. These things hate it. Okay, Spot.
Of course, without the lights, it makes our trek through these tunnels much harder, and we're able to encounter an old friend here. The spider bugs. These things are a pain and are basically designed to be a combination of a spider and a scorpion into a single creature. There are both male and female versions, and they will slash and bash you if they manage to close in on you. So yes, definitely don't let them get close because yeah, it's gonna more or less get you killed. However, there is one good way to deal with these things, and that is to not even shoot them. You can simply make them afraid of you by scaring them away using your flashlight. Yes, the light damages them and is easy to freak them out and scare them off that way. And that's mostly because they have adapted to the darkness and not the light. However, reaching a large track with Pavel, we struggle to cross. But with our Russian Olympic skills, we use one of the poles to cross to the other side, which is a good moment for me to bring up Pavel.
like I do.
You see, as a character, Pavel is a fan favorite, and his voice actor, Mark Ivanir, actually does such an amazing job at making him sound like somewhat of a goofy and aloof character. Like, you want to trust this man, but we will learn more about Pavel as we go. His name, however, though, is the literal name Pavel Morozov, which is interesting as it's the same name of a real-life person, a kid that was aged 13 that actually informed on his own father to the Stalinist authorities back in 1932, which you can take that whatever way you want to. Finally, we reach some lights, but before you know it, we need to split away from Pavel to find a fuse box. For this part, it's important to just charge up your flashlight battery using the universal charger. Next, we stumble past a bunch of spider bugs before reaching the fuse box. Now, the map design here makes it really easy to just jump back over a ledge and get straight back to Pavel at the opening of the door, instead of having to go all the way back the same way we came from, which would be more risky, and you'd probably have to use some ammo to get rid of the spider bugs. This next chapter of the game takes us and Pavel out of the stuffy tunnels and out to the dead city of Moscow once more. Now, we stock up on gas masks and limited amount of filters, and it seems like the area here has been well kept, so we keep exploring, and we realize that it's most likely well kept due to rangers having stayed here previously. It seems also that the outside world is warmer than last time, as summertime is probably coming around, and, well, Moscow is heating up.
Whoa, that's impressive. I heard about this place. That plane was headed into Moscow when the whole city caught fire. The building where it crashed, that's the entrance to the theater.
We can find a few interesting side thingies that can be done here. There are 3 different small rooms that can be entered, filled with skeletons that all reward you with good moral points if you go to them. Now, our goal is to actually reach the theater station, but to get there, we need to slowly traverse the swampy area in front of us and use the crashed airplane as a sort of checkpoint to cross to the zone. Going underneath some stairs, we are asked by Pavel to check the service room. If we head over there, inside we can find a pipe shotgun, but just as we pick it up, a watchman springs out and jump scares us. Pavel will then ask us when we return to him if we're fine and why we're covered in blood. Heading closer and closer to the plane, eventually we break open the door and enter inside of it. Walking around in here, it seems like Pavel is seeing things which aren't even there. He's imagining the dead passengers as if they were alive, and it starts to freak him out.
Chuck, are you seeing this shit too? Look, they're alive.
The further into the plane we go, the worse it gets. And when we enter the cockpit, a flashback plays of the pilots who were operating Flight 76715. We also get to finally fully witness the exact moment when it happened, the moment that the bombs dropped. And what we know about Flight 76715 is that it was a flight that was headed back to Moscow after being in Mallorca for a vacation. And just as we were about to land, well, the nukes have been dropped on the city, which made the plane crash with everyone inside seemingly perishing. Waking up, we rush over to Pavel, who seems to have been stuck in some kind of nightmarish trance dream, similar to what we've seen from others before, where their mind gets totally boggled up. However, this dream made him take off his mask, so we make sure to put it back on to save his life before he breathes in too much radiation. Together, we quickly exit the plane and rush through the streets, fighting off watchmen and even a few demons before being boosted over a door by Pavel.
Give me a hand!
We rush down the escalators and bang on the door, demanding the people on the other side to open and let us in. While this is taking place, we try to also survive the waves of watchmen that keep attacking us. But eventually, and thankfully, they do open, and we get away from them and into a new station.
Like a stroll through the park, huh?
We find ourselves in the Bolshoi Theater station, which is an interesting section. It's a moment to catch our breath and explore, and you're able to gain a lot of positive moral points in this section if you decide to actually go around and listen to the loads of different conversations that can take place. Now, this station is actually also the cultural center of the metro. You are able to go around and watch some theater shows, enjoying the view of, well, either random women dancing or a man that somehow managed to tame a watchman, similar to a lion tamer. And if you actually watch the entire theater show, you will actually earn the Patron of the Arts achievement in the game. Another interesting fact is that this station is based on the real-life Tetralyana station of Moscow Metro. Sitting down with Pavel, we have a meal and some drinks. During our conversation, though, it starts to become evident that Pavel truly is fully invested in the Red ideology, as he keeps talking about the great things the Red Line does. This is also when Artyom realizes that his vision is getting more and more blurry. Is it the drink? Is it the alcohol? But looking into his glass, it's clear that we've been poisoned.
Yes, sir. Welcome back, Comrade Major.
It is private.
So yeah, of course, if you have played Metro Last Light, you will know this, but if you haven't, well, guess what? Pavel, that bastard, is a traitor. He betrays us, and we now learn that he's actually a major within the Red Line army. His name being Pavel Mozotov, the same as the traitor child from real life, makes total sense. Like, literally, Pavel Mozotov is what Russian people call people that are traitors. And honestly, the first time playing the game, this legitimately shook me. I couldn't believe it, and I think what stung the most was that we went ahead and saved Pavel so many times already, and he seemed like such a decent man. But even still, he decided to betray us, and his ideology took precedence above anything else. For probably like the 700th time, Artyom awakens, and we find ourselves in the depths of the Red Army's base. Pavel plans on handing us over to his superior. We learn from Pavel that the Red Line also wish to take control of D6, and that war is coming. He wants Artyom to join the Red Line, showing that he still holds at least a little bit of sympathy for Artyom, but it does seem like his ideology is far more powerful. Now, we also get to meet General Korbut for the first time. We also get to see Lesnitsky. Now, you might not remember this, but back when we were still in D6, one of the guards and soldiers talks about Lesnitsky, who was part of the Order, which is, well, pretty much the group that the Rangers and the Spartans all belong to, and that he'd gone missing. Well, now we know where he went. The guy straight up betrayed the entire Order in exchange to be part of the Red Line. One more time, we get knocked the hell out, and this time when we wake up, we're being interrogated. It's an interrogation by General Korbut himself. He even uses what Pavel called us while we were surviving together, musketeers, to try to mess with us.
Musketeers. One for all, and all for...
Secretary General Comrade...
And that was one of the things about Pavel that stood out. He kept saying these things that made you believe him, made you trust him, made you like him. He was just a likable character. But clearly that was all a facade. Honestly, Pavel's betrayal still stings. And I think once again, it's just the fact that, yeah, the man was just too friendly. And that's what makes it hurt even further. Now, the door opens and a new face enters. It's Secretary General Comrade Moskvin, aka the leader of the Red Line. However, it's pretty easy to tell from the conversation between him and Korbut that the Secretary General clearly is not really the one in control here.
Spill your guts now! Tell everything you know of these six! Fuck!
Moskvin is far more rash and acts uncomposed, almost uncivilized. Meanwhile, Korbut is far more tactile with his words and his choices. To see someone else in the room, this is Moskvin's son named Lenya behind him. But it seems his son doesn't really like what the Secretary General is doing, and so he argues with him and then runs away. Korbut grabs some sort of syringe and injects us with a serum, which knocks us out. But this time, we witness a dream. What we see in this dream seems to be Artyom and some other kids making their way outside from the metro when they were still very young. However, while the other two kids ran away, Artyom still remained outside alone just as the watchman attacked. But he was saved by a Dark One, and the Dark One even touched him. This could explain why Artyom is able to communicate and feel the Dark Ones and avoid their psychic control. He already had a connection to them from a very young age. We also get a glimpse of Artyom's mother at the start of this flashback memory sequence, as we're able to witness her being attacked by what seems to be Nosalis or rats of some kind. Exiting the dream, we hear Pavel and Korbut talking about the baby Dark One, who they are trying to get their hands on. The location of it has been found, and it's in a place called Venice, a station in the metro which we have yet to visit, but that is named after the Italian city of, well, the same exact name, Venice, which is all surrounded by water. So you can already assume what the place is going to look like. By the time our eyes are fully able to open up, we see Lenya, the son of Musquin. He seems to be angry at his father and even mentions the fact that his dad killed his own brother, which is information that will be handy for later. Lenya decides to disobey his dad and breaks us loose so he can make an escape. Crawling through the vents, we make several stops along the way and listen into what Pavel and Musquin are talking about. Well, they're sending Pavel out to hunt for the Dark One. Meanwhile, in another room, we can hear Corbo telling soldiers they need to check out the church, the same church that we entered in Metro 2033 when we escaped from the library. It seems like they're going to be using this ranger outpost as a way to actually get inside of D6, and they plan on using it as a way to, well, distract. Rather, they're going to use a frontal assault and then the back door to get in. Now, Corbett even brings up a messed up tactic. He tells the soldiers of the Red Line that they should use no insignia, and when committing this mission, they should also not be raising the Red Line flag until victory is 100% guaranteed, just as a way to avoid any repercussions to the Red Line in case their attack fails. The next chapter we find ourselves in is Revolution, where we have to either sneak around all the gods or we can once more blast our way through. However, the most fun part of this level has got to be some of the small Easter eggs that can be found in here. An example of this is a funny little joke. Now, after stopping this one giant fan and beating up a bunch of evil villains, you can find a box in one of the corners. If you open the box, there'll be a smaller box inside of it. Opening that box will reveal an even smaller box, and opening that one, you'll find another even smaller box, and then finally opening the final small box, we'll find a single military-grade round of ammo inside of it. Yeah, it's just a nice little practical jokes by the developers. There's actually a few more small fun things like this that can be found inside of the game. In one of the rooms after the storage room, there are actually fake bombs inside of the locker. However, if you shoot the fake bomb with a shotgun, it will actually explode, so don't shoot the fake bomb. The final little Easter egg is that there are two red guards who will stand together and talk about the events of the front line. That is one of the levels which we played in Metro 2033, where we basically went to the battlefield that took place between the Reds and the Reich. Now, the two guards are interesting because they'll mention and speculate about how both sides of the armies were wiped out. The explanation they give includes that of a single man, aka Artyom, which is funny because they're talking about a hypothetical soldier and a demon that were able to take everybody out, which is interesting because in reality, it was all Artyom. Finally, we're able to escape the grasp of the Red Line. As we reach some really sketchy room, a man enters in. Lucky for us, though, this man is here to save us.
Wait a minute. Artyom, is it you?
We have been rescued by Andrew the Blacksmith once again. The same man that saved us in Metro 2033 has returned once more to keep us alive. While talking to him, he tells us that he's built a new machine, a special machine. He named it Regina, which is a rail car whose name is derived from the Latin word for queen, which, fair enough. Now, Andrew made Regina specifically to use her for the sole purpose of moving refugees from the Reich and the Red Line to a safe neutral station as well as Hansa-controlled stations. Funny enough, though, there is an early reference to Regina back in Metro 2033. See, inside of Andrew's room there, he actually has a sketch of it on the wall. Andrew makes the decision to give us Regina, the rail car, so we can head towards Venice. He wants us to, however, return Regina to him if possible. Now, using the rail car, we can now see why the main menu of Last Light looks the way it does. It feels like a direct reference to this rail car section of the game here. Now, another thing about the railcar is that unlike the railcar section in Metro 2033, where we are non-stop moving forward and we have no control over our movement of the railcar, in Last Light, however, we have full control over it. We can stop and get off, we can turn off the light, and it feels like this is where the game shines the best. Sure, Last Light is still a linear game, but these small moments of freedom to explore make the world seem so much more real. And exploration just like this is what would happen in real life too. You can either go and explore a little bit and be rewarded, or punished, depending on where you decide to thread. I think, honestly, each Metro game has slowly improved on the last one, and eventually all lead up to Metro Exodus, which is the game in the series that finally decided to do open world. For now, however, we have to defeat a few spider bugs and open a giant door blocking us from progressing further. Doing this, after just barely surviving the tunnels, we're able to reach other humans, which in this world is either a death sentence or a safety. It seems, however, though, that these people are refugees. They're all civilians trying to escape away from the Red Line and Reich War. However, these people had sent a vanguard ahead and had heard gunshots. So we decide to investigate for them and see what's going on. Going deeper down the tunnel, we witness and hear the sounds of a woman screaming. It seems two guards are trying to, well, do things to her. I'm not going to say exactly what here, but you can already assume what. So we make sure to knock out the first guard, and the same thing with the second one, saving the girl in the process. However, if we actually take too long here and we totally ignore the situation, they will end up killing her. So you definitely got to act quickly. This whole part of the metro is filled to the brim with bandits, and I tried my hardest to stealth here as much as possible so that my ammo would not run out, because I was starting to run really low here. Now, we managed to save one of the civilians from the other group who had been caught by the bandits. We learned from him, though, that there are still women and children being held captive by the bandits, so our goal is to help them all out. Heading down the road, there are two split paths. Now, going down one of the paths, which seems like the safer one, it is a dead end, and you can tell that the bandits had marked this as a safe passage because they were going to use it as a trap. We witness bodies of poor souls that had trusted the signs, and, well, we also find one bit of military-grade ammo, and just as we pick it up, we get jump-scared by a freaking Nosalis. Well, yeah, it does happen. The game does try to, kind of trick you sometimes with things like this. Now, going back and heading down the direction that was actually the correct one, the one that looked like it was the dangerous one, we knock out several guards and save a woman and a child that the bandits held captive. In the background, one of the other guards actually mentions the noises and brings up someone called the Master of the Tunnels, which is a mythical creature from the novel Peter, who is apparently the keeper of the St. Petersburg's metro, and some believe that the Master of the Tunnels can make people's wishes come true. Finishing up all the bandits allows the civilians to continue their journey, and we reach an area that seems submerged underneath water. Here we find a bell that, if we ring, will make a person on the other side come to our rescue. But first, we have to deal with a large quantity of Nosalis that enter from the different cracks in the roof, as well as some of the air vents all around us. Lucky though, after fighting off quite a few of them, the fisherman reaches us. His name is Lenor, and he's able to get us right in time onto his boat. The boat section of the game is not super long, but we do get to see another new enemy type here, the shrimp. And just as the name suggests, this is a large crustaceous-looking insect mutant that is often found by water in the world of Metro. There are loads of different versions of the shrimps in the Metro, but they all tend to function in a similar way. They have heavy armor on the outside, which makes them extremely hard to attack, especially from the front, but best case is always to avoid them because they aren't super aggressive, and unless something really angers them, they're not really going to go after. You also learn from the fishermen that people of Venice even eat these things, which definitely cannot be good for you. However, together with the fishermen, we do get attacked by the shrimps, and we have to use a whole box of grenades to defeat them and stop them from pestering us. Now, the reason that these shrimps went after us was because something had disturbed them. Most likely, the remnants of the Red Line soldiers alongside Pavel, who came through here earlier. Reaching Venice, one of the workers named Simon has heard of the Reds being in the area, and he doesn't really like them, as well as the bandits and the local gang. So he is actually asking us, Artyom, to help him deal with them. However, that angers the fisherman, and he doesn't allow it. Now that we can walk around Venice, it's a city all on water, which makes sense given what it's named after. The station has clearly been flooded, is what we learn. The people here seem to be fishing for anything they can get their hands on, and if you stay around watching one of the fishermen for long enough, you will literally see him get dragged down into the water, and you can even head over to one of the bars here and start drinking. If you keep drinking for long enough, the woman on your right, who starts out, from the beginning as a older woman, will become more and more beautiful after each drink, until eventually you black out and wake up with her right next to you in your arms, but she's no longer a beautiful woman. She's now back to her old self, being an old lady. We even find a special room. I say special, but it's a place where you can hang out with the local girls. But heading down to one of the private rooms, we can hear Pavel, who wants to pay the local gang leader to get his hands on the Dark One. But we get caught in the act of peeping on Pavel by one of the girls. We pull her over to one of the rooms, and now the game offers you the same thing they offer you in Grand Theft Auto. We can pay for a dance if we want to, of course. I will be blurring this whole section, naturally. But yeah, you can spend your military grade rounds here or leave right away and instead head over towards where the bandits are located. If you do stay in here, you can even take a sip from the hookah, which will make you go all crazy and give you a whole trip. However, we're not going to deal with that. Instead, we go after the bandits, and while fighting them, I actually noticed a few things in the room here. On the wall, there is actually a painting, and one of the paintings is 3 guys who I assume are all developers of the Metro games. Another one is of one of the developers riding on a random green horse, which, again, is super random. But for the most part here, we can fight against all of these guards. And if you do actually stop and listen to what some of these guys are talking about, there are a lot of references because, for example, 3 of these guards make a reference to one of the moments from Metro 2033. So there are a lot of things you can pay attention to if you really spend extra time.
Hands behind your head. Well, what an unexpected... Hey, steady now. All right, you're on top, D'Artagnan, you are on top.
Catching up to Pavel, we manage to capture him, but a small distraction from Simon causes us to lose focus and Pavel is able to escape. Thing is, we actually know what happens to Pavel after this exact point in the game. And the reason for this, again, is the Metro Last Light DLC packs. Just like Anna, there is a Chronicle pack named Pavel where we learn that Pavel managed to escape from Artyom, but is then captured by the Venice bandits, but is able to eventually escape from them and link up with the Red Caravan that are headed towards the Revolution Square, which we'll talk about later. Now that we're done with that, Simon is with us and he helps us find a path and a ladder that can get us out of Venice, leading us straight out to the dead city of Moscow again. Once more, we find ourselves in a section that allows for more freedom. See, this part of the game cannot be exactly approached 100% whatever way you wish to, but you do have a little bit more freedom than normal. Walking around in this swamp, you're able to actually see a lot of indicators for where you're supposed to go. If you keep walking around long enough though, eventually the zone will actually turn to nighttime. See, yes, this is the one zone that does feature a day-night cycle. It will start to become darker as time goes on, and it takes about 20 minutes before it fully turns to nighttime. The place is also littered with weapons. You can find a Kalash 2012, a Valve, essentially like a shotgun, and pretty much any other weapon you can imagine can be found here. Another enemy type also can be found here, and that's the Liana, which are a strange plant-like creature that have giant tentacles which can grab onto you and do loads of damage. Now, we've only really seen the Liana one time before, and that was back in the library section of Metro 2033 for a very, very short part. As we make our way through the swamp, we need to use the gas canisters to activate a boat that can be found on the other side. Now, these gas canisters, well, they're mostly empty, and the only one that has anything in it can be found inside of the crashed plane close by, as well as a few other areas. So, as we go there, we have to fight off loads of different shrimps and, well, just a bunch of watchmen. If we're lucky, though, we do have a demon that comes down and kills the shrimp for us, so we can get on the boat in the meantime. Now that we've off the boat, we have reached nightfall. We're close to the church now, but there is still a bit to do. Luckily for us though, because it is nighttime, it is much easier to sneak past most of the mutants instead of fighting them. And this is important as when we finally do see the light of the church and try to get closer to it, things can get a little bit rougher. But before that, there is actually a bus here that if you go inside of it, you can actually hear Anna broadcasting to you on the radio frequency. However, going down the ledge, we see Anna and some of the other rangers. As we try to run up to them, well, something bad happens. A giant new monster attacks us, and this is the bog shrimp. This is more or less like a short little boss battle, but the bog shrimps are considered the shrimp mothers and are super territorial and aggressive. So we need to fight this little mini boss off before we make our progress. Now, we do get help from Anna and the other rangers with some suppressive fire, but it's mostly up to us to defeat the giant bog shrimp on our own. And while we're fighting it, it will keep trying to charge at us or shoot giant goo at us, but also there will be other smaller shrimps attacking us at the same time, which is really annoying. Eventually though, if we do shoot enough bullets, we will defeat it and we are able to jump across to safety with the others. Entering the church, it seems that Anna regrets letting us get captured and feels somewhat ashamed and responsible for it. Now that we are in safety amongst our friends, we're finally able to tell Anna and the others about the information which we've been able to gather. We learn that there are apparently also peace talks, as well as a meeting being held by all the leaders of the different stations in the metro. They want to hold peace talks between the different groups. So for now, we know that the Reds as well as the Reich are all going to try to use this time to attack D6, while Miller, who leads the Rangers, is not even at the base at the moment. We're also told about the church and the catacombs that are hidden deep underneath it. The church, which we have actually used to our advantage before. However, before that, someone actually knocks at the church door, but they're using an old password.
Could it be Lesnitsky?
The explosion temporarily knocks us down, and we learn that it's the Reds. More specifically, is Lesnitsky, the traitor, and he's basically used his knowledge to come and go after the Order. Shortly after the Reds leave, we rush after them to try to save Anna, who they have kidnapped. They know they can use Anna as a bargaining tool against Miller, so we have to save her. I will tell you though, the catacomb section, which is right underneath the church, is probably one of the most unnerving and creepy places in all of the metro. Normally we have gotten used to the more kind of, rustic looking design of the metro. The way it looks is more modern, but down here, it feels like we've been transported back to the Middle Ages. Using a strange elevator, we head down deeper while a bunch of Nasalis try to attack us going down. Another thing that really sucks about this part though, and that's really messed up, is the fact that this place is brimming with Nosalis, and the game does let you buy ammo in the church right before we get to this section, but it's still not enough ammo since you have a low overall ammo limit, making it so that we're forced to use stealth even if we don't want to. There are a few different enemy types that can be found down here. There is another anomaly, similar to the regular electrical one. We have one called the Darkness, and these things are basically invisible, they're shapeless, and non-hostile. It's easy to notice them as your screen will start to display radiation all around it, but honestly, the Darkness is easy to avoid. Within the catacombs, we can go in a lot of different directions for exploration, and you can find corpses of rangers and other individuals can also be found here, meaning that other people have definitely ventured down here, but they've never been able to come back from it. Now, opening one of the wooden doors, we can actually look inside and we're able to see a interesting temple of sorts, like a weird ruin that just exists there. I honestly think this whole place has a really cool atmosphere. I really liked exploring it. However, you do have to use, stealth here, but I kind of ended up unfortunately messing up this whole section because my stealth failed. And the worst part is that once you get past most of this stuff, there's a giant elevator, and this section forces you to wait while the elevator comes down, and in the meantime, the Nosalis will keep attacking you. Now, technically, you can actually do this whole section without firing a single bullet. To do that, you simply just got to run around in a circle and try to find any kind of location that's a little bit elevated, and eventually, by the time the actual elevator is almost at the bottom, the Nosalis will give up and run away, which is perfect. However, if you don't do the running around technique, you will get caught and killed. And I just ended up blasting most of them and shooting them, which is not the smartest method. However, when it finally does come down, we're able to use it to ascend up further. Upstairs, some of the bodies look more fresh, and it could mean that these are the, Reds that we had been dealing with earlier. And, it looks like they have recently been killed, so it means we are closing in. Crossing the bridge in front of us, though, we encounter the Metro game's probably first proper boss battle, if you don't really want to count the Bog Shrimp. But this is the Rhino Nosalis. When we get knocked down by the Rhino Nosalis, we find ourselves in a little area that's kind of like an arena, where we don't even need to shoot a single bullet at this Rhino. We can simply just let her dash towards us and hit the giant pillars, which will injure her enough to cause the Rhino to run away. And of course, that saves us ammo. However, she is not yet defeated, and following her, we reach the second room, where we can now use the pillar again to lower her health, and this, of course, is the best method to use. There's even walls you can make her crash into, which is the best course of action. I mean, hell, you can even use the claymores as landmines to do damage. But eventually, as the rhino kind of keeps crashing into stuff, you will have to use your actual bullets. Now, however, just as we defeat the rhino, the whole room starts to cave in and fill with water. And this is probably because her attacks have broken down all the pillars, which were foundations that held this place together. So, the water will start crashing in, and eventually, we'll be blasted out. Having survived the water flooding, we wake up in a regular tunnel, and we seem to have been able to catch up to Lesnitsky and the others. They again confirm their plans on using Anna to negotiate with the Order and ask the guard to put a mask on her so she doesn't get infected, which is odd given that we are underground, so radiation infection shouldn't be the case, right?
Eye on her. Anything happens, it's your head. I'll come get her when we're done here.
Crawling further through the vents, we see a room where the Red Line guards are about to execute a bunch of innocent civilians. Jumping down, we stock up on ammo quickly before entering the room itself, but by the time we get in there, the guards have already shot most of the people, besides a single man that managed to live. Talking to him, he tells us about an infection that the Reds knew about, and that they all of a sudden came and started burning everything and everyone in the station simply because they might have been infected.
Of the infection. They came on the second day. No one had died yet, but they came with the flamers.
Even though the infection had only taken the lives of a few people on the first day and quickly subsided shortly after, by the second day, it seems that this infection has something to do with the Red Line themselves. It may have been planted by them. Here we can also pick up night vision goggles once more, and this time around, they're given to you a little bit earlier in the game, so they have more of a use case. The rest of the level, however, plays similarly in fashion to all the other ones. We sneak around and partially shoot our way out of most parts. The whole station is on fire, and entering the different rooms, we can see bodies as well as different references connected to each and every soul that was taken in this place. Finally, when we catch up to Lesnitsky, he's holding Anna captive. This scenario only really has two ways of playing out. One is where we enter the room while wearing a gas mask, and one where we don't have one on our face, which, well, will give us a slightly different voiceover by the man himself. Other than that, the reaction being more or less the same no matter what we do. Overall, it plays out exactly the same, with Lesnitsky throwing Anna onto us and running away. And if we're able to shoot him, well, he will actually just dodge it and still will not die and will be able to escape.
Hurry! We have to get closer. There's Hansa and our men. Suffocating would be.
Now that we have Anna, we hurry and try to get out of here, but we are weak. Luckily, though, as we get to the top, there are soldiers together with Khan, who end up saving us. We find ourselves in quarantine to not spread this potential virus. This is also the first moment that Anna shows her feelings for Artyom, and the two of them have themselves
the Devil's Tango and
a nice session of Uga Chaka, Uga Chaka. Now, one of the doctors actually inspects us shortly after this, and we're cleared to leave. However, if you try to stay for Anna's inspection, you'll be urged to leave over and over again, which is a little bit sketchy. Talking to one of the guards and the doctors, we learned that this was a virus born from a strain of Ebola. However, it was made in such a way that it was meant to kind of quickly die off after initial infection, meaning that it was engineered to be this way. Finding Khan, he teaches us about the station we are in. We know now that it's ran by Hansa, and they are expending a lot of their money on dealing with this infection, so they aren't the happiest of moods right now. As such, Artyom and Khan will be using the River of Fate, which is a quick route that can lead us to Polis, where the leaders are all meeting up. Khan believes the Metro is a living, breathing thing with a heartbeat and even a soul, with a mind that can't really be understood by many. Using our lighter, we remove some of the cobwebs as we make our way down here, and that shows us a poorly attached gate with a skull and bones on it as a form of warning. The River of Fate is clearly far more paranormal than any other place. And honestly, anytime we hang out with Khan, it feels like we run into paranormal stuff. And I think this is one of those things in Metro that makes it kind of feel a little bit different. The mutants kind of make sense, it's radiation. But the paranormal stuff makes the game feel a little bit more eerie and creepy whenever you do explore. We also see a phone that rings. If we pick it up, we hear the voice of Artyom's mother calling for him. Clearly, the river is using trauma and memories against anyone that enters it. Soon enough, we reach an area where water is shooting down like a waterfall. In the giant pool in the middle, if we enter it, we get transported to another memory. This time, it's us witnessing Artyom himself, just as he launches the missiles that took out the Dark Ones. Khan even mentions that the river will cleanse Artyom and forgive his sins, saying that Artyom still has time to change his fate. Next, we witness the Botanical Gardens, the same ones where we hunted the baby Dark One from the start of the Last Light game. Together with Khan, we're able to chase after the little one over and over before the river finally spits us out, and just in time before we were actually about to drown. Leaving the River of Fate, we find a Hansa outpost, as well as the train that holds the Dark One. The following level is all about railcars. While Khan handles the railcar itself, we're about to shoot back against any Hansa or Red Line soldiers that are trying to catch up with the train. This section is pretty much on the rails, and you don't have as many options as you did earlier when you were using, well, the railcar by Andrew the blacksmith. However, we are eventually able to jump onto the train itself after catching up to it. And when we walk around it, we even find a giant box filled with paintings, and one of the paintings we can see is straight up the same painting from the bandit camp back in Venice, and it's again the one of the Metro developer riding on a green horse. To be honest, the train is a relatively hard fight, and it's filled with soldiers, but lucky for us, at the end of it, we find the Dark One, who we allow to escape. However, as soon as the Dark One touches us, we can see Artyom's deepest memories. We get to witness the Dark One that specifically gave Artyom his psychic powers, as well as Artyom's memory of his mother from before the bombs had dropped. This has got to be the first moment in the game where Artyom as a character truly realizes that the Dark Ones aren't as bad and never were bad, and the little Dark One even throws shade at Artyom for more or less destroying his entire race.
You're the first.
We remembered you and were waiting. We could remember all the thoughts of our race. And you killed everyone. And now I'm alone.
Before you know it though, the entire train has blown up, and this explosion caused the little Dark One to also get exhausted, so we gotta make sure we grab it and run out of the metro. Now this is important because the little Dark One needs more or less radiation from the outside to stay alive, as the air in the underground isn't great for it. Another little detail is we never actually realize what caused the explosion of the train in the front. However, this is another one of those things that's revealed in the DLC packs for Metro Last Light. This one being from the Chronicles pack named Khan. We learned that Ullman, who you play as in specifically this one DLC, as well as some other rangers, had actually blown up the train on their mission here. So yeah, kind of explains that backstory, and we'll talk more about again the DLCs at the end of the video. Now that we're outside in the upper world again, we can explore around, but we have something to our advantage, and that's the ability of the little Dark One. It can use its abilities to allow us to see the Watchers as well as really any other mutants that are lurking around. He even tells us that the Watchers are more afraid of us than we are afraid of them. It's kind of funny, but the Dark One is honestly such a sympathetic character. Not only has this poor thing lost all of its family, but it also doesn't really understand fully anything. The world to the Dark One is all new and confusing, so when it sees humans wearing clothes, it wonders if it can do the same thing. There's even a section here, if we go upstairs, where if we try to go to the bodies in a corner to pick up some, well, weapons or ammo, when we turn around, we'll be attacked by a bunch of watchmen. However, if you walked backwards and picked up the ammunition and whatever is here, you actually don't have to fight them and they won't spawn. So just a tiny little detail. And also, literally shortly after, the Dark One appears actually in front of us again, and this time, just like it mentioned mentioned earlier, it found itself a bunch of clothes. However, the path we are treading on gets attacked by a demon, so we have to resort to using the giant bridge to make our crossing. Once we decide to cross the bridge, a storm has come by and it's honestly just gotten really dark and started raining. But using this to our advantage, it's the best case scenario, to be honest. We can easily sneak past most of the watchers who are calling this place their home. Eventually reaching a zip line, we hear the radio call out the K4 crossing and that there are too many Nosalis and to be careful. But using the zip line is far from careful, as the demons will actually hear us. And lucky for us though, the little dark one is able to distract the large demon and allow us to escape. The D-Pot is the next chapter, and here the Dark One can sense humans, so it stays away for a little bit. However, the humans that are here are actually friendlies. We're able to actually interact with them early on, and there are even a few traders here that are temporarily set up as traveling merchants, as a way to stock up on ammo and weapons. This is also the last shop in the game, where you can actually buy stuff, so you can pretty much use all your military grade, ammo in this specific place. So definitely use up all your currency. That's exactly what I did, because from this on forward, you can't even use your ammo for anything else. You can just use it as regular bullets, but you can't really purchase anything. Leaving the merchants behind, we quickly get surrounded by red-line soldiers. Now, this part is much easier to stealthily approach, as it's the Dark One that helps us out. So shooting out the lights or even throwing knives is enough to distract the guards. Again, the Dark One's ability to allow us to spot the targets is super useful and just generally helpful, and does allow us to have a lot more versatility. Having dealt with all of the red line soldiers, eventually we reach a door. Opening it, inside we find Lesnitsky, and he attacks us, but with the help of the little Dark One, we knock him out, and we can now see his memories. We can witness the moment he betrayed everyone in D6, the moment he reported to Korbut and gave out information on the facility. We even see the memory of him holding Anna hostage. After witnessing all of Lesnitsky's memories, we have the option of either killing him or simply knocking him out. If you want to get the good ending, it's best to just knock him out, but if you want the bad ending for the game, then simply kill him, which will just lower your moral points. Shortly after knocking him out, we can actually hear the radio where the Reds are telling stalkers, well, people who are basically out exploring in the wild, that they will be closing the red line and to use the red square as the only entrance, meaning that they're going to use their regular line to probably move their troops. Once more, the dead city calls for us, and as we explore it, we can hear the cries of the dead. Even the little Dark One tells us that they are alive and dead at once, which is very strange. Their souls are tethered to this world, and they can't move on, causing the ghosts to appear once more. All over the walls, we can see them, and it's honestly kind of terrifying. This whole section of the game is just really disturbing, because these are memories of people who were all wiped out. As we move around, we get many glimpses of the shadows and ghosts. In one of the rooms, we find an odd red table, which doesn't really fit with everything else, and one of the notes here is written by Artyom. He mentions in the note how this city is a crypt, a fallen city with no soul left behind, but that it somehow is still the home city of the Dark One, which is kind of odd. There are also a few glimpses of the past given to us as well. The Watchmen are here once again, and killing them is our only option. Now, in one of the houses, we even witness the memory of a family watching through the window as the rockets are being launched from Moscow, while the TV also warns of war.
Just like with my family. So that's what it's called. Missiles.
The little Dark One even takes notes of all of our actions, and everything it sees, it actually soaks up and learns as much as it can from. It also warns us to not use our weapons when possible. In another room, there's a cassette tape that, if played, tells of a man who actually lived here. And there are actually many more tapes and things thrown about this place that can help you understand better how this place functions. There is actually even one which talks about the last words of a ranger, and it was just a bunch of words of warning for any future adventurers. And if you use this information to your advantage, it actually allows you to breeze through this place much easier. But for the most part, the thing that we should only really fear is, well, fear itself, as well as the shadows and ghosts, as they can easily freak you out. But the mutants with their nests in this area won't really do anything as long as you avoid them. They're unlikely to attack you, so eventually we climb the ladder. The last memory we see from the shadows is actually a shadow of Artyom himself. from long, long ago, when he was merely a child inside of the metro.
He's not a shadow. You, yourself. Long, long ago.
There are also a few darkness anomalies around here, but they are mostly easily avoided and don't really do a lot. They just cause a tiny bit of radiation, so they're easy to avoid. There was also a weird thing I noticed here, which is a visual bug where the sun looks extremely bright and kind of weird. At first I thought this was intentional, turns out it wasn't. Our current direction is leading us towards the Red Square, the only place where we can enter the metro from. On the way though, the Dark One notices that the creatures here won't attack us, so it's just easy to avoid them as they don't have a red aura. However, there are a few shadows here that will try to grab a hold of the player, and as well as the Dark One. The shadows are much stronger in this place as they cry out for help. We even actually get to see the actual tomb of Vladimir Lenin, the founder of the Soviet Union, which is weird because if we open his coffin, it'll be a 3D model of a different random corpse because, of course, they can't really put him in there, I guess, because that would probably cause some controversy. As we move on, we reach one of the squares, and as we fall down, we find ourselves, well, in another arena. That's what pretty much this whole place resembles. Now, this is a sort of boss battle, and the enemy, well, it's multiple soldiers, including our old friend, Pavel.
It's Artyom! Well, your luck had to run out someday. You can disregard the order about the weapon, okay? Comrade, we have special orders directly from Comrade Korbut concerning this very ranger. We are to eliminate him. Fire! Fire at will!
Don't stand.
This is the first time since Venice that we see Pavel again, and he does try to kill us, basically here, unlike the previous times. Before, he hasn't really tried to genuinely kill us, but now it is part of his goal. Here we have to fight back and use all our resources. Sneaking around is not really an option, so we have to toss Molotovs, grenades, and claymores to take down the enemies, and whoever we can snipe, especially with the help of the Dark One, also comes in handy. With enough resilience, we're able to defeat most of the soldiers, leaving only Pavel. As we chase him through the staircases, eventually, even though he does do a lot of damage if he does end up shooting you, we manage to catch up to him.
A knife, huh? That's my boy. That's my boy. Давай, давай. No remorse. No reproach. Давай. The fuck is this? You're letting the beast loose on me, huh?
He will be injured from our bullets, and, well, he'll be threatening us, but what we do is grab a hold of him and look into his memories. Of course, we have the option here of either killing or sparing Pavel. If we spare him, it gives us good moral points, but if we kill him, well, the little Dark One will remember that, so it's best just to spare him and let him stay alive. Also, canonically, Artyom doesn't kill Pavel. Pavel actually stays alive at this point. Now that we've sorted out the Red Square, we find ourselves in the Garden Zone. We can hear noises of creatures that are extremely large in this area, and eventually we learn what they are. One of them is a massive freaking bear. It's just a giant bear, I'm not even gonna lie. Now, at first it seems like we can avoid it, but falling down into another arena-looking place, we are surrounded and stuck to deal with the bear. See, the Dark One mentions that the female bear, is simply trying to protect her young ones, which is understandable, but while fighting the bear, we have to use timing to our advantage. See, around this location, and this is the way it's been designed, there are actually bodies of previous, well, stalkers or rangers, or even soldiers who've died here, and we can pick up a lot of their resources for healing and ammo. However, the bear itself will only really take damage if we shoot it on its back whenever the little Dark One actually slows down time for us and we can target it better. But while we are doing this and while we're shooting at its exposed target, it really is helpful that we have the Watchmen that keep attacking the bear for us at the same time. But they will also sometimes attack you, so it's better to shoot a few of them and let the rest attack the big bear. After enough bullets, we've beat the bear and it will run away. Now, while it's weak, a bunch of Watchmen will attack it. Now, we actually have an opportunity right here to change our outlook. So if we wish to gain positive moral points, we need to quickly shoot all the Watchers before they actually kill the bear. This will allow the bear to escape and give us the achievement Guardian of the Gardens. However, if we don't do that, if we don't shoot them fast enough, they will kill the bear and we will get negative moral points. Rushing away from this location, we reach a building and we're saved by Miller and Khan, with the little Dark One actually tagging along with us inside. Funny enough, the little one is wearing like a yellow raincoat, which kind of looks like the one from the movie It. Before you know it, of course, Miller is freaking out and thinks that the Dark One is going to kill all of us. But before he can shoot, the thing, well, Artyom gets in the way, and the Dark One shows us a memory of D6. It seems like the Dark Ones are actually still alive and are hibernating underneath D6 right now. Thankfully, Khan and Artyom are able to convince Miller to not shoot the Dark One, but we also need to explain the betrayal of the Reich as well as the Red Line to him. So, doing that, we're finally ready to catch up to everything in Polis. Now, heading towards Polis, luckily Miller does believe us, and he does also believe that the attack will happen, but unfortunately there is no proof that he can actually show to the others. So, Khan suggests using the Dark One to reveal the truth of what Moskvin and Korbut are planning. So, as we rush through, the Reich are, well, basically too weak to actually commit to an attack, but the Reds have clearly bolstered up and are ready to do it. Walking through Polis, we reach the site of the meeting. Miller calls Moskvin out as a liar, and the little Dark One is able to, well, rush him and show everyone the truth by revealing his memories. Opening different doors inside of Moskvin's mind, we are shown that he was tricked by Korbut into believing that his own brother was going to kill him.
Convenient details might surface concerning your brother's death.
So, by suggestion from Korbut, he preemptively went ahead with the help of Korbut to take his own brother out.
Silent treatment. What are you looking at me with those honest eyes for?
And since then, he's more or less been under control of Korbut for this whole time, which is why he does anything Korbut says, or else he will expose that he took his own brother's life. Now that Moskvin has been revealed, things are out in the open, and the only thing that remains is that we must hurry back to D6 for a final stand. Geared up and ready, we get onto the metro train to D6 with the Dark One and the soldiers from Polis. We even see Artyom looking at Anna a last time, because he knows that this may be the last time he will ever see her again. As we reach D6, we can already tell if the game will have a good or bad ending. You see, if we have enough good moral points, then the baby Dark One will actually board a train to Polis and tell Artyom that he will ask his own kin, his own people, his own family to aid the Rangers in the battle, but if he have a bad ending, well, then he will instead say that he has to save his family before leaving. As we get to the station, most of the other Rangers stay on the actual track, as they're going to be reinforcing 2 other areas that the Reds plan on attacking, something Miller had already mentioned. But the battle itself starts with us, well, getting a morale speech from none else than Miller himself, trying to hype everyone up and get them ready for the attack. Once we are fully geared up, we prepare for the onslaughts, and this is going to get intense. We hear noises of an army outside, and before you know it, a train crashes into the wall and blows the gate open. Now at this point, we just have to spray down enemies as much as we can. The game doesn't really care at this point if you have good or bad moral points. You're allowed to shoot anyone and everyone. And the reason for this is because by now, your actual ending has already been locked in. You know the moment that you actually talk to the baby Dark One at the end inside of the metro train here, if you got the good or bad ending. So at this point, shooting everyone is the best option. The Reds, however, use a lot, and I really mean a lot of firepower, including a giant tank-looking machine, which just has a giant gun tower on it. I don't even know what to say about this thing. It's just huge, and requires us to shoot out the armor with a sniper that we found close by to be able to take it down. Thanks to the help of a giant machine gun that we find, we're able to take down a lot of their troops. However, just as we think things are on our side, a giant train crashes into the wall, and we're knocked out.
Secure the perimeter! Cover the exits! Stay alert, men!
Save your voice, Gideon. Here.
Once more we awaken, and Korbut has caught us and Miller. Now, while he spouts a bunch of shit, we are told by Miller to blow it all up. As D6 has been armed with many fuses and bombs, so we're ordered to take our own life to stop the Red Line from being able to take D6. This is the game's bad ending. We witness Artyom's face, his memories of all the events. He sees the night he spent with Anna, his childhood, All of it flashes by as the Reds get blown away alongside Artyom, Miller, and everyone else in the tunnel. The game ends with Anna holding what seems to be her and Artyom's child while telling the story of Artyom to their kid. The story of the Dark Ones, mentioning that they will return because they promised one day that they would. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the bad ending, also called the C'est la vie ending, which is kind of poignant, right? It's kind of a bittersweet ending, which I should point out is not the canonical ending. This is just an alternate ending. This is not the real one. So it is a bad ending, but luckily, this is not what technically happens. The real ending is the good ending, so let's see what that one is like. It's also called the redemption ending, and it changes one big part. Right when Artyom is about to pull the button and blow the whole area up, the baby Dark One actually stops his hand and tells him there's no need for that. Instead, the little one has released the Dark Ones that were being kept underneath D6, and with the help of them, we're able to kill off all the Red Line soldiers. In this ending, we also get a few more details. We learn that Ullman died off screen, as well as many other Spartans and Rangers. Miller managed to actually live and is now in charge of the Polis guards, but he lost his leg and is in a wheelchair. However, Khan simply disappeared, which kind of bothered me as I always wanted to know more about Khan. But, well, Khan did tell Artyom that the little one would be the savior, and with the good ending, that is true. The game finishes with the Dark Ones leaving and Artyom promising that they will meet again.
It will be better for everyone if we go away, Artyom. But one day we'll come back. I'll be big then. Goodbye, my friend.
And that is Metro Last Light, ladies and gentlemen. And holy moly, do I love this game. There are clear improvements for me personally in this game over Metro 2033. There are far more areas in Last Light that allow for more exploration and freedom. Whereas 2033 was honestly even more linear, this one actually offered a few more places where you could explore. Also, the story here feels even more solid. By this point, Artyom is a hardened soldier and has learned from his mistakes. He's a haunted man, and he can finally deal with that trauma. Now, also, I just gotta say, I love how we get to see more of the Metro here, as, like, honestly, just seeing a larger variety of zones and areas is really cool. Like, for example, Venice or even the Undercity, which feel a lot more distinct in design, because the Metro can get a lot of samey after a while. Something I always loved about Metro as a series, more than some other similar games, was how solid the world building feels in this game. Like, each Metro line, each station, each faction have an interesting backstory to them. And keep in mind, Artyom's story is only part of the Metro. There are far more things here that can be learned about by reading the books. Last Light was fantastic, and you could easily argue that perhaps the Redux version of both games did a bad, thing by making the difficulty less about survival and stealth and allowing for more guns blazing. But to be honest, playing this game on the highest difficulty on regular, and regular difficulty, there is a big difference, okay? Like, the game is definitely harder on harder difficulties, and the lack of bullets as well as sometimes lack of filters and many of those things make the experience more rough, and it does feel like more difficult and more terrifying doing anything. However, I will admit the game does get easier at the end when you're handed essentially everything you need, but I did struggle against the Mama Bear, for example, and even Pavel in the battle because I was just running out of resources. Overall, to me, Metro 2033 and Last Light are both solid 8.5 out of 10 games. Honestly, I'd give them even a 9 of a rating, but there are a few bugs and glitches that drag this thing down, and sometimes certain areas could feel like the encounters were a little bit samey and could have used some variety. However, the game of Last Light doesn't end just yet. You see, we have a few more things to talk about. We also have secrets and Easter eggs, and of course, we can't forget about the DLC. So we'll start with that. First up is the Ranger Mode DLC pack, which basically just reintroduces the Ranger difficulty that you can find in Metro 2033. This is a free DLC if you have the Redux version of Last Light or even the special edition. Then there is the Season Pass, and this was actually released in May of 2013 and included, first of all, the Faction Pack, which released in July of the same year, where it specifically focused on 3 new and totally original single-player missions that would actually expand on the Metro universe. Now, I'm going to go through each of these, but let's start with the first thing here. So DLC 1 is the Faction Pack, and the first mission out of the 3 that you can find in here is called Heavy Squad. And this one features a single stretch of constant combat with an insane amount of enemies attacking you. You have to basically deal with so many enemies that a lot of people actually complained about this DLC for this particular reason. While playing this DLC, you will play as Hans, who is a shock trooper on the side of the Reich. So yes, you're playing as the bad guys. You're accompanied by 2 people, Hook as well as Diesel, who are both also Reich soldiers. Now, this particular DLC level has been criticized, like I said, for being way too difficult, especially on Ranger difficulty. Now, this may have to do with the fact that you have close to 0 medkits to use, and the waves of enemies just keep on going and going, and the battle itself is canonical, by the way, and takes place on the front line between the Reich and the Reds, sometime before the attack on D6. So, again, this is like the battlefield that non-stop happens between the Reich and the Reds, but the thing is, though, there are 5 levels of waves here, and if you somehow make it to the 5th wave, the final wave, which is the hardest one, you will be rewarded with a victory, right? And you will claim victory as Hans, and the Reich will actually come with reinforcements to help you out. Overall, this mission is canonical. A lot of people complain about the difficulty, but it's just a fun one to do if you want to. The second mission from the DLC Faction Pack is actually a little bit different. It takes you back to the library, where we play almost like a stalker, right? We play similar to the stalker games here. And what do I mean by this? Well, basically, the DLC is called Krashtria, which I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but basically, in this one, you play as a ranger trainee from Polis Station, whose goal is to try to prove himself as a worthy warrior. Now, he starts by meeting up with the Krashtria team that is in the area to help him out when he begins his little scavenging journey within the Great Library above. Now, he's able to talk to Kuzumich as well as Shaman, who are both from Polis and are part of like the Spartans and Rangers. Now, they serve as a way for you to actually buy equipment, but also will reward you with cash rewards for finding any sort of artifacts out in the world. And yes, you heard it right, out in the world. This DLC does allow you to explore the world in a way similar to, well, the Stalker series, as well as really any open world game. Now, making the world open world is interesting because compared to Artyom's story, which is far more linear and straightforward, this was the first time they decided to actually allow you to explore freely. Now, the DLC won't end until you do one particular thing, which is to find the secret Metro map that's located at the bottom of the library. However, if you want to, you can also go collecting artifacts. Like I said, you can sell these artifacts to Shaman, but you can also just try to collect as many as possible. Now, because this whole DLC was sort of like a test to see how well Metro would work in an open world setting, just like the Stalker games, this would end up being a good test for them for later on Metro Exodus. Now, for those who do not know, Metro Exodus, the 3rd game in the Metro series, is a semi-open world game. It has like large swats, just huge areas of open world that gets to be explored, but still has a linear story overall, which I think is really cool. And this was definitely them trying that out, testing the waters and seeing how well it would work. And to be real with you right now, I could easily spend a whole video just talking about this one single thing because there's like a bunch of artifacts and small details that are really interesting in this particular mission. Like, for example, the artifacts themselves will actually sometimes randomize and spawn in different locations, which allows you to approach this particular mission in different ways in each playthrough. Overall, I think this is a fantastic level and a fantastic DLC to play. The final level in the, well, particularly Faction DLC pack is the Sniper Team one. And here you play as 2 people? Well, you play as a red line sniper alongside a spotter, who together have infiltrated a heavily guarded Reich outpost, which, well, is found on the surface. Now, the mission here has the two of you trying to go on a full-on stealth mission to neutralize the soldiers, but if you get caught, it's an instant automatic failure, and you need to restart the mission from the beginning. See, the location of this mission is the same place that the outpost level for Metro 2033 took place, but it's been slightly tweaked and altered. Now, this mission is, like, not as special in my opinion. It's not as interesting, but still a fun one if you just want to have more content from Metro. Overall, all three of these missions try to focus on a few different aspects of the Metro series. The first mission is the guns blazing warpath, which Metro Last Light definitely is very similar to and is kind of allowed you to do. Same thing with the Redux versions of both games, they allowed you to go more guns blazing. The second, though, shows you the ability to explore and play a more open type of gameplay with exploration and sneaking. You also even have the ability in the second, like, actual level here, where you play as the ranger trainee, to fully avoid killing any of the mutants in this section, if you want to, with the final level focusing on full-on stealth, allowing killing, but focuses on just making sure that you are using stealth 100%, just like how some levels in the game will require you to stealth through even if you don't want to. I think the faction pack is perfect and is a great DLC, but it doesn't even end here. There are still a few more things to mention and a few more DLCs. The second DLC was called the Tower Pack, released in September of 2013. Now, I have to say, this DLC got a similar criticism, just like the first level of the faction pack, and it was about the difficulty. But what is actually shown here from a story perspective is actually far more interesting. It is vaguely hinted that the Tower Pack takes place 7 years after World War III, which happened in 2020 in Metro. You play as a soldier that's part of the Central Metro Command. With an injured leg, however, he's not able to actually do any combat. So instead, using a virtual machine that was made by a bunch of scientists, or two scientists, you're able to use it to train and test out almost every weapon from the Metro games, including 2 of the DLC weapons as well. And more or less here, it's just a wave survival, right? You have to survive waves of mutants, even includes boss enemies from the main campaign, and overall, it is literally just a wave mode, and it's not really more than. However, the last DLC pack, and arguably the best one by a landslide, has got to be the Chronicles pack. In this one, you have 3 chapters as well, just like in the faction pack, which I've already mentioned. But here's the thing, though. You have already heard me talk a bit about these before. See, in the first one of these 3 levels, you are playing as Anna from her perspective when we enter the Botanical Gardens. Now, this level is from her side. You get to sit up on top of the tower and see exactly what she saw when we were dealing well with the little dark one, as well as the Reich soldiers from above. Now, she does try to rescue Artyom from the distance, but it is kind of impossible, and he still gets caught and taken away. The second mission in this DLC has you playing as Pavel. This one takes place and is set in Venice, just when Pavel escapes from us whenever we actually run into Simon. Now, he's eventually captured here by the leader of the bandits of Venice and is tied up and tortured, but he manages to escape and is then forced to fight his way with a flashlight and a knife all the way out of here before finding some guns. Eventually, though, he's able to escape Venice and meet up with Janke, one of his Red Line contacts that is posing as a homeless man. He then helps him and escapes from Venice, making it back to Korbut, who instantly dispatched him back to the Red Square, where Artyom ends up fighting him for a final time.
I'm gonna be honest, the Pavel level is hands down the best DLC in this game. I mean, let's bring up a few very important points. One, there are 2 bandits who speak to each other and mention that Bourbon, yes, Bourbon from Metro 2033 is still alive. Yes, after being shot in the gut by one of the bandits, he still survived, and even the bandits themselves talk about this event as if it was this crazy thing that he was able to beat every single bandit on his own, without any of them knowing that Artyom was the one who did most of that work. However, that's even besides the point. Bourbon is alive, we now know that. However, his whereabouts are unknown to Artyom and really anybody in these games, and I do hope we're going to see him again in the future. But for now, though, that's one of the things. Another one is, once you finally manage to get out of the shit show as Pavel, you can get a special dance from an old grandma. This is a thing in the game. Don't ask me why. It's definitely, I'm not sure if I would call it a highlight, but it's there, it exists, and I mean, it's something.
And finally, of course, the last mission is known as Khan. This takes place during the train chase level while we jump on the train and Khan is outside on the rail car. In this level, you play as Ullman, who is the one that caused the explosion to that train. The level is simply just showing Ullman blowing the train up and kind of explains what Khan did while Artyom was missing, which is pretty much just going straight to Polis. That's all he did. All of these 3 stories are perfect additions to the Metro Last Light story, as it perfectly explains how and why some characters just seem to show up in other places randomly with no explanation. The last and arguably the most terrifying and annoying and disturbing DLC that I played was a Spider Lair. This was part of the developer pack DLC levels, and in the Spider Lair, you're specifically doing a single player section. What happens in this one? Well, you're a unnamed stalker and are forced to navigate through basically an old missile silo, which is just filled to the brim with spider bugs, which are honestly my least favorite enemy in all of Metro. Okay, I hate these spider things. I hate spiders in general, and these things are just annoying. All you really have is eventually a flamethrower, you have an A-shot, and a flashlight, as well, of course, with your lighter. And yeah, you gotta go searching around for filters to try to escape. The reason this level even exists was because, well, this stalker, as well as a man named Simon and a man named Petrovich, both wanted to go down into a different place, similar to D6, a silo, a missile silo, to look for riches. Unfortunately, it doesn't really go that way, and both Simon and Petrovich die, and guess what? This lonely stalker has to kind of make his way through 2 days after they started this journey of theirs. It is honestly really weird, and yeah, I don't know. We don't even know if the character survives in the end. And that's the DLC. However, Last Light does also have a few more things, and we're talking about references as well as Easter eggs. You see, both games also include this kind of stuff, and I'm talking about both Last Light and, of course, Metro 2033. For example, in Last Light, there are actually references to Avatar. For example, Miller updated his appearance in Metro Last Light to resemble that of Miles Quatrick from James Cameron's science fiction movie Avatar. Then there's also Andrew's computer, which is found inside of Andrew the Blacksmith's hideout in the Regina level, where basically there's an axe as well as some knives stuck inside of what seems to be a keyboard, which actually could be a reference to the developers being frustrated while making this game. Also, one of the delivery trucks, there's a broken truck down on the bridge, which actually has an interesting slogan, which when translated literally says, delivering crap to your home. So literally poo-poo. Then, moving on from that, like I mentioned earlier, there are developer portraits. I already showed you a few of them, but there were actually even more of them which were in the game. And these are all just different developers from 4A Games and our different team members. Another thing I mentioned in the video earlier is the fishing gone wrong. Of course, a fisherman in Venice gets caught, and well, guess what? He gets pulled out into the water. You also might remember getting drunk, where, well, Artyom can basically order a bunch of special drinks, a drink called Bullet, and he will end up, well, doing some dirty dancing with the local old lady. So yeah, you know what I'm talking about. There's also the nesting boxes where you keep opening the boxes and eventually just find a single bullet at the bottom, as well as a reference to Stalker. Yes, Artyom can actually stumble upon 2 scavengers that resemble 2 characters from specifically Stalker. One of them is Strelok, as well as Doctor or Doc from Stalker's Shadow of Chernobyl, and they're found in the theater station. There's also a poster of Metro 2035's book that can be found in Metro Last Light. Here, basically, there is a text that specifically says, there will come soft rains. And yeah, it's just an interesting little situation and a few little references that can be found here. The last 3 Easter eggs are all a little bit random. So first of all, there is one, for example, of a man named Yuri Semetsky, who is an actual Russian fan and editor. And well, it's become kind of a meme for writers in Russian books, or just generally writers in Russia, to kind of try to kill him off in funny different ways. And same thing happens here. The man gets killed off again in this game. But it doesn't end there. There's also a weird little, like, kind of word-for-word recreation of the dialogue between, well, specifically 2 characters, that being Versakhny and his wife from White Sun of the Desert, a cult Soviet Western-like action film made in 1969. Now, again, I'm mispronouncing all these names, which I do apologize for. However, there is also another little Easter egg, and that's of Pavel. On the DLC, Pavel can actually, well, if you do play the Pavel DLC, you can find Jason Voorhees' mask and knife inside of a safe, which is, weird, but fair enough. And finishing things off, we have the final reference, which is the universe of Metro 2033. Now, you guys may not know this, but Dmitry Gluhovsky, who just gained a massive fan base when he, well, created the Metro books back in like 2009, well, he started a group project called the Universe of Metro 2033, allowing other writers to create their own stories set in the world of Metro. And to date, this actual expanded universe of Metro contains over 90 books in different languages. However, before Lesnitsky and his fellow Red Army soldiers breach into the church base and in the Undercity level, if you listen to the conversation between two of the vendors here, one of them will actually mention that someone flew to Peter, or St. Petersburg, and apparently there are survivors in London too. Now, this first one is a reference to Vladimir Berezin's Road Signs, which is another book where one of the novel protagonists, named Sasha, as well as a small group of people, actually make or use a Yak model plane to go to St. Petersburg, where there are still survivors. And then there is another reference. The second line is actually a reference to Grant McMaster's Britannia. And Britannia is another novel within this kind of expanded universe of Metro, which is set within London, of survivors that survived there. I think it's really cool that they were able to kind of create this expanded universe with the help of fans. And I think, honestly, Dmitry Gluhovsky did a great job by allowing fans to kind of make fan fiction that can expand on the great universe that exists in the Metro games and in the Metro books. And there it is. That is Metro 2033 and Last Light. These games are fantastic, and I think when you put everything together, there is a very human story here. The fear of loneliness in the Metro, the many paranormal moments through the games, and just all the different things make for a fantastic apocalyptic horror game. Now, honestly, some of the things that are most terrifying in the Metro are other humans, and I think the human element of this game is what makes it stand out. As much as paranormal activities and monsters and mutants can be scary, sometimes it's other people that are the scariest. In our real world, it's not often that ghosts take our lives or ghosts haunt us the most. It's other humans who cause the most pain, but also cause the most love, if we're going to be real about it. And honestly, this game kind of encapsulates all of that. It's like a little microcosm of humanity in a single place. And I will say there are several times in this game where I was leaning back in my seat because I was just terrified of what was going to come next. The game does use a few cheap jump scares like most games, but for the most part, the atmosphere that does everything. Like, the atmosphere does everything in this game. The atmosphere of the dead city, the atmosphere of the crammed metro tunnels, and just the noises of the mutants. Like, the sound design in this game is just beautiful and honestly a terrifying experience. I think everyone needs to play these games and give them a chance. They're not even super expensive to purchase, and I'll even try to leave some links down below for some cheaper links, but definitely pick these up if you haven't already, and even when they're on sale, which they do all the time. Metro to me holds a special place in my heart, and I can't actually wait to talk to you all about the third and final game, Metro Exodus, which took everything good from Metro 2033 and Last Light and more or less expanded and improved upon it. But that's going to be it for today. Drop a like down below, subscribe if you want to see the Metro Exodus video, and I'll see you all the next time. Bye-bye.